Chapter 1588. The vortex in reincarnation was enormous, like a cosmic black hole, devouring all energy. Meanwhile, that skull-like head was filled with black holes, terrifying beyond compare. Now, the head that made even the starry skies tremble was actually crushed by the touch of a clay hand. How shocking was this? It shocked the world. The entire world became silent, and everyone became completely stupefied like weathered statues. That skull-like head belonged to the first-generation Mausoleum Guardian. It had witnessed countless eras and passed through who knew how many great eras. It was a creature that had survived from the resplendent, flourishing age of that person. Its power was unimaginable. Even the immortal king that walked out from reincarnation, the one who could obliterate the great cosmos and destroy all realms, was incomparably respectful towards it. From this, one could see just how terrifying it was. But now, in front of the clay statue, it seemed so fragile, like a piece of paper. After being lightly touched by the clay statue's hand, it collapsed. It was truly a bit frightening. All the realms were silent, and the entire world became silent. Even the dog emperor who was making a ruckus just now became listless, as if he wanted to grow his tail and become a human. It wasn't just the Yang realm. All the realms were paying attention to the two-realm battlefield. When they saw this strange and silent scene, all of the old monsters felt a layer of goosebumps appear on their bodies. There was such an existence in the Yang realm? No, it came from reincarnation. How could it be like this? Who was it? Just which unrivaled existence in history was it? There was no need to think too much. This kind of existence that exceeded common sense, definitely didn't appear out of thin air. It had definitely shone once before, its resplendent radiance illuminating the history of a certain evolutionary civilization. Everyone was truly frightened. Even the true immortals felt a type of shivering feeling. Even the immortal kings were scared, feeling quite uneasy. Didn't they see that even the dog emperor was well behaved? Its large dog eyes continuously glanced at Nine Dowie, wanting to find out who it was through him. Senior, spare me. Within the shattered head, its true spirit light flickered, about to be obliterated by that hand at any time. It was greatly frightened and couldn't help but beg for mercy. This was an unimaginable matter. At this level, one's bones were all extremely hard. Even if they were to die, few would cry out in fear and beg for their lives. The first-generation Tomb Guardians definitely had the qualifications to be arrogant. They had powerful backing, and if they didn't have a certain level of strength of character, there was no way they could evolve to their current level. But now, he was terrified and screamed desperately. Everyone realized that not only did the Tomb Keeper recognize this person, he also felt incomparable reverence towards this person back then. That was why he was begging like this today without any regard for his face. Everyone was shocked. It can't be that person, right? Even the immortal king was shocked. Someone couldn't help but mutter like this. At that moment, all the creatures that had some understanding of that ancient history, the experts above the true immortal realm, felt their scalps go numb, and they couldn't help but gasp. Heavens, could this be the reappearance of a forbidden legend? The invincible person from back then had returned just like that? Many people almost cried out, their hearts pounding like thunder. At this moment, there wasn't a single person who wasn't shocked. If their guesses were true, then it would simply be earth-shattering, capable of shattering the seas and collapsing the sky. It would be sufficient to shake all eras. Regardless of whether it was the rotting cosmos lifeforms, the true immortal powerhouses, or the remaining immortal kings of the various realms, they were all terrified. They all looked towards Nine Dowie, wishing to confirm through him whether or not it really was that person. It was because Nine Dowie's voice was trembling. He already bowed down, unexpectedly choking with sobs, carrying a sobbing tone. The more this was the case, the more everyone believed that there really was a possibility that person had returned. Go, guard the cemetery well. The clay idol's palm reached out from one of the branches of reincarnation. With a light brush, that shattered head was instantly restored to how it was before. Yes. The giant skull looked as if it had been granted amnesty. Half of its withered and incomparably enormous body reached out. It trembled like a stellar stream. It knelt down, continuously kowtowing, as if it was worshipping a saint. Then, it turned around, almost rolling and crawling away. Before leaving, it grabbed that immortal king and brought him away. It actually had this type of attitude. One could imagine just how great the prestige the clay idol held towards it was. It was too shocking. The clay idol's palm moved, and the enormous reincarnation vortex that was like a universe's black hole disappeared in an instant without a single ripple. It was even sent to guard the cemetery. Could it be that the 9 coffins aren't empty, that there are still people who will come back to life? Someone immediately became bewildered. However, compared to the clay idol that only revealed a hand, those bewilderment and other things couldn't be considered much. What could be more shocking than this clay idol? You really are, Meng, patriarch? Nine Dowie stuttered as he spoke. The old man normally spoke slowly, but when he faced enemies, he was even more unyielding than a bald dog. However, today, he was extremely bashful, extremely nervous, like an inexperienced youth. He actually had this type of attitude. Right now, he directly called out this person's identity. Who was Patriarch Meng? Many people were puzzled, even true immortals confused. Only the remaining immortal kings couldn't help but contract their pupils when they heard this, their bodies trembling. They guessed who exactly it was that returned. The kings were all speechless, all of them stunned. After so many years had passed, this person was actually still here, moreover someone who walked out from reincarnation. It made one produce endless associations, just too terrifying. Who is Patriarch Meng? A fallen true immortal couldn't help but ask. As a result, this type of question made the fallen immortal king, who was in the darkness forever unable to return, shiver inwardly. He glared at him, telling him to shut up. It was because the fallen immortal king was scared, terrified. Their path, this system was different from the pollen path. It was extremely ancient, established by that person. As for Patriarch Meng, he was also one of the founders of this path. Even those who didn't know about the clay idol's identity were stupefied, incredibly shaken. Even Nine Dowie called him Patriarch, so one could imagine just how astonishing the identity of the one who came was. It's him, it's definitely him. He disappeared for several great eras. Could it be that he has always been guarding something in reincarnation? An immortal king muttered, feeling a chill run down his spine. Who exactly is Patriarch Meng? A rotting great universe creature couldn't help but ask quietly. It's that person's guide. Finally, an immortal king replied quietly and cautiously. When these words were spoken, all of the heavens and 10,000 realms unexpectedly trembled, as if it triggered some type of response. In that instant there were creatures in the darkest ancient underworld who opened their eyes, causing this place to shake intensely. Under the 4 extremes floating earth, there were also ancient creatures who trembled, great Tao rumbling. In Celestial Emperor Burial Pit, there were even more monsters who trembled, releasing ho-ho sounds from their mouths. The various realms of the heavens seemed to have great Tao echoes, triggering shocking irregular scenes. Ancient totems, traces of gods and devils flowing with divine blood, as well as scenes of the underworld shattering and soul rivers drying up, all of them turned into irregular scenes one after another, flowing through heaven and earth. This triggered alarm and shock in the world. That person's guide? Some people immediately knew about the clay idol's identity. That person, in the eyes of many old monsters, was an insurmountable peak, unmatched at the end of his path. His guide's name naturally shook history, known by many people in the past. In reality, in that era, before that person rose up, he suffered many hardships. If it wasn't for the elder surnamed Meng sacrificing himself to protect him, he might have experienced even more blood and pain. This was especially the case with regards to the Tao path. This patriarch Meng gave that person quite a bit of inspiration, greatly affecting him. That person established an unprecedented system. In the beginning, he also adopted the strengths of various systems, and only then did he rush into the heavens, rising up in that most terrifying and dark age of chaos. In his system, there were predecessors who established the foundation as well, the elder surnamed Meng one of them. Back then, he already walked quite far. Unfortunately, this great paragon surnamed Meng was still a bit lacking in the end, his own Tao path severed, not continuing the broken path, unable to completely walk through it. Only when that person's unmatched might pierced through the past, present, and future, suppressing the great Tao of the heavens, resplendent in the sky, did he truly and thoroughly walk a path that shocked all great eras, unmatched throughout the long river of time. Meanwhile, in this glorious and unmatched evolutionary system, the elder surnamed Meng definitely had the qualifications to be one of the founders. Back then, for the sake of protecting his land, for the sake of protecting that person in his youth, the elder surnamed Meng bathed in blood, slaughtering undying creatures. In the end, he was strangely corroded, falling into darkness. Only when that person rose up, moving through the world, illuminating past and present, fighting through the heavens, completely ending the dark age, bringing back the elder surnamed Meng from the dark abyss, allowing him to return to clarity. It could be said that the relationship between that person and this great paragon was too close, something outsiders couldn't compare to. Now, he actually appeared here, appearing from one of the branches of reincarnation. How could this not shock the world? Even the ancient underworld, burial pit, four extremes floating earth, and other places most ancient monsters couldn't sit still. Not only did they immediately contact the sacrificial ground, they even more so contacted the source behind them. It really is your distinguished self? Nine Dao's voice was trembling, seriously bowing. He was sure that this was definitely that great paragon, the founder of a resplendent evolutionary system. On the side, the dog emperor was also acting like a human, standing up straight, following behind Nine Daos with the rotten corpse in greeting. This dog's mouth surprisingly didn't utter any random words. Rise. The clay idol spoke. Was this an admission? Everyone in the outside world was shocked. Between heaven and earth, some great Tao seemed to have been activated, continuously rumbling. Countless symbols flickered, moving through heaven and earth, even the cosmos' stellar rivers swaying. He is that person's guide, one of the founders of the entire true immortal system? Even a fallen true immortal was stuttering. This was a true meeting with the ancestor, the great paragon who saw the source of their path, so how could he not be moved? If you hadn't fallen, you would still have the qualifications to call him the ancestor, but now you have fallen into darkness, unable to return. You can only pay your respects from afar. A fallen immortal king said in a low voice. Regardless, even though our bodies are in darkness, a strand of will in our consciousness still yearns for radiance, or else we wouldn't have appeared here. Regardless of whether it is the past, present, or future, he will always be our ancestor. A fallen true immortal retorted, not hesitating to go against an immortal king. He himself was extremely moved. The rotting great cosmos creatures' hearts were also beating like drums. They could understand the fallen true immortal's emotions. After all, this was the founder of an unmatched system. A living ancestor appeared, so how could they not be shocked? It was just like how, if they saw the founder of the pollen path, they would also tremble. Even now, the rotting great cosmos creatures were still trembling, because that person's path didn't only affect the past, even the present world was covered under its radiance. Now, everyone was equivalent to witnessing a miracle, witnessing a truly invincible legend. A living existence at the end of a path had actually appeared just like that. Very soon, some people came to their senses. Had the clay idol always been in the path of reincarnation? What exactly was he guarding? He had appeared from one of the branches of reincarnation. Without a doubt, the first thing that people thought of was definitely an important node of the path of reincarnation that person had opened back then. That person dug up the ancient underworld, searched for the world's most ancient reincarnation, and in the end, established his own reincarnation and did many world-shaking things. Some people thought, could it be that this virtuous paragon was guarding something for that person? In fact, some immortal kings even made a further connection. Could it be that that person had left something behind, or could it be that he himself was also in the cycle of reincarnation? So this virtuous paragon had always been guarding? This was because there was a rumor that that person might personally experience reincarnation and act out the truth. Perhaps there was a small chance that this rumor was true. In any case, this virtuous paragon had always been in one of the branches of reincarnation. This matter was of great importance, and once the truth was revealed, the level of impact would be unimaginable. What exactly was he guarding? Ancestral Master Meng's appearance truly frightened the evolvers of all realms. Even the strange races like the Grey Mist and the Black Blood all fell silent today. No one dared to peep at him, and they quickly fled. In addition, the ancient underworld, the floating soil of the Four Poles, and other places all had ancient creatures awaken at the first instant, and they also sent news to the source behind them. They felt that things were not looking good. Could it be that that person who had disappeared for countless years was really going to reappear? Could it be that this ancestral Master Meng was acting as the vanguard, positioning the coordinates for it? Rumble. The news exploded. It was unknown whether it was the strange creatures that had spread the news, or whether the ancient underworld was really connected to the heavens, but it actually triggered the activation of the heavenly gate that had been difficult to open since ancient times. A war chariot emerged from the crack in the heavens, as if it wanted to descend to investigate the truth. In the end, the clay idol raised its large hand and gently swiped it, and the ancient war chariot that came from the heavens directly disappeared in half. With another swipe, the crack was completely closed. This kind of strength and power caused the powerhouses of the various great realms to be speechless. Chapter 1589. The gate of the heavens opened, but it was gently touched by the clay idol's palm. Then, it closed and was forcefully pushed back. What kind of power was this? Everyone was petrified and indescribably shaken. That was the supreme heavens. The ancient gate opened and a chariot drove out. In the end, this ancestor Meng directly erased half of the chariot and closed the gate. Everyone was speechless. From immortal kings to ordinary cultivators, all of them were slightly dumbstruck, and they were dumbstruck on the spot like clay statues or wooden statues. It was said that the heavens were unreachable, but some people just didn't care and didn't like that kind of gate. At this time, Jiudaoi's heart was surging. He let out a low roar and felt his blood boiling. He was like a lonely wanderer who had faced life and death alone for many years. Now that he saw his family and his backer, his old eyes became warm and he almost shed tears. After so many years, he had actually seen the ancestor of this lineage. Ancestor! He couldn't help but cry out again. The Dog Emperor's eyes were also wide open. He was shocked that virtuous Sage Meng was the founder of an evolutionary system and shocked at his terrifying seniority. It went forward and naturally called him ancestor. Creatures like him had lived for more than one era and had always looked down on others as juniors. Now, it was his turn to be humble. Cough! The Dog Emperor coughed and glanced at Old Pai beside him. Old Jiu, I didn't think you'd become a grandson. The Dog Emperor's mouth had never been well-liked. Even under such circumstances, it still had the leisure to say such things. Jiudaoi wanted to strangle it. This master's mouth was really asking for a beating. Not far away, Chu Feng had a strange expression. Even Jiudaoi had become a grandson? The truth seemed to be more or less the same. An ancestor-level existence of a major system had appeared, and Old Pi from the first mountain was immediately reduced to a junior. The world was shaken and the world of the living rumbled. In reality, the sources of the heavens were fluctuating and the great Tao was recovering. It was all because of this old man's appearance. After the Tao patterns on his body appeared, the worlds were resonating and resonating. Crack! The heavens split open once again. Clearly, things weren't over yet. The beings up there were determined to open that mysterious gate. However, this time, no chariot came down rashly. It was as if they were worried that it would be worn down again. Who is it that is so disrespectful, actually daring to destroy the azure immortal carriage like this? Someone said coldly. This was a youngster, purple hair scattering down his chest and back. He was a bit arrogant and discontent. However, his words came to a screeching halt, disappearing in an instant. Someone appeared next to him, grabbed him, and tossed him away, causing him to disappear in an instant. It was obvious that the newly emerged evolved being was there to protect him. He was afraid that he would offend the unfathomable powerhouses of the lower realms and bring about an accident. Which virtuous paragon achieved the Tao? After so many years, has a new system appeared in the lower realms? Is there another Tao ancestor-level powerhouse? Through the door, one could see that it was a middle-aged man. His face was blurry, but one could sense that he seemed to be in a complicated mood. The pioneer of a path, the founder of a system, regardless of what cultivation realm he was in, he was extremely worthy of respect, worthy of being called an ancestor. Our Tao ancestor has sensed something and opened the gate of heaven. Senior, please come to the upper realm. We are willing to worship you and invite you into our ancestral court. The middle-aged man who had manifested in the high heavens gate spoke again, this time in an extremely polite manner. You all can leave. I will not leave the old land, Old Man Meng said. The lower realms aren't conducive to cultivation. They were previously corroded, and there is too much turbid energy. Tao friend, please go to the higher realms, another person spoke, his voice aged. He dared to call himself Tao friend, so his background was clearly astonishing. Even though he didn't reveal himself, one could imagine his status. It was very likely that he was a Tao father of this lineage. He wanted to give Patriarch Meng an extremely revered position and pull him into their system. Patriarch Meng continued to refuse, not wavering at all. The person who was suspected to be a Tao ancestor fell silent and did not speak again. Ancestral Master Meng treated him coldly, as if he didn't have a good impression of the heavens. He raised his hand again, intending to seal the door. For a moment, the atmosphere was very subtle and tense. The young man who had spoken earlier but was thrown out appeared again. He said coldly, "We invited you with good intentions, but we didn't expect that someone would not appreciate it and be so rude. What's so good about the filthy lower realm?" Ancestral Master Meng ignored him. For someone at his level, he wouldn't bother with the later generations. Taoist Jui stood out directly. There was nothing to say about the great paragon not bickering with the younger generation, but he had no choice but to teach them a lesson. However, he also seemed to have misgivings about his status as he glanced sideways at Chu Feng. Chu Feng was a bit annoyed. It was now his turn to take the stage. What was this old man trying to do? Was he asking him to challenge him? What filthy place are you talking about? Who are you looking down on? Do you think someone of your status is worthy? How dare you? Chu Feng shouted. Moreover, Taoist Jui raised his spear and pointed it at the heavens. Doubtlessly, no one had dared to go against the heavens in so many years, let alone point a weapon at an emissary. You don't know what's good for you. Not only was the young man angry, but even the middle-aged man in front of the door said, "Aren't you guys going a bit too far?" It was the one who had thrown the young man out. His voice was somewhat cold, almost as if he was going to condemn them. "The heavens are amazing? We don't want to go," Chu Feng said coldly. Someone said he didn't know what was good for him. He pointed directly at the young man, indicating for him to come down. Even if the experts of the heavens wanted to look down on him, they couldn't. Taoist Jiu's expression was also gloomy. It wasn't like people from their line couldn't go up. That person had already fought up there for many years. He said coldly, "If you guys hadn't poured out the ominous back then and banished the bizarre, how could this realm have been eroded?" These words shook everyone's hearts. There was actually such a secret? The heavens have been purified and safe, but the various realms have become the filthy lands you speak of. Who was it that caused this? Taoist Jiu asked loudly. The spear in his hand glowed, as if he wanted to poke a hole in the heavens. The middle-aged man's expression became sluggish, but he immediately opened his mouth and said, "There are too many secrets and helplessness involved. Even now, it is difficult to say clearly. During all these years, there have been too many upheavals and bloody battles in the heavens. Tao ancestors also went on expeditions, also dealing with problems, but there were also Tao ancestors who died." Gasp! Everyone drew in a breath of cold air, and felt their hearts trembling. What had they heard today? They were all world-shocking great secrets. Regardless, back then, you all poured out the source of disaster, so it was wrong. Yet now, you are still looking down on us, saying that the lower realms are filthy and covering your noses with your hands to express your disdain. You all, what kind of things are you? Taoist Jiu was furious. The ancestor surnamed Meng had always been silent, but now, he directly took action. A large gray hand reached out and forcefully sealed the heaven's gate again. He didn't seem to want to talk to the creatures up there. He didn't have any good feelings towards them, so he directly took action. "Tao friend, I still have some things to say. I wish to meet with you." A grand voice sounded. The person suspected to be a Tao ancestor spoke. He didn't open the gate, but his voice directly passed through the heavens and intimidated all creatures of the various realms. Even someone as powerful as Taoist Jiu's body trembled slightly. He was actually about to collapse. It was clear that this voice was also a type of warning for him. It could imperceptibly suppress him. When they saw this scene, countless light particles drifted out from the depths of the reincarnation path. Dust filled the skies. The ancestor surnamed Meng's eyes shot out terrifying beams of light that pierced through heaven and earth. "Tao friend, why must you reject me 1,000 li away?" In the heavens, as the voice fell, the heavens split apart. It was forcefully pushed open by a large golden hand, revealing a corner of the vast and boundless heavens once again. It was clear that it was that Tao ancestor who took action to open the sealed gate. Dust filled the skies, all of it shining. It was accompanied by a large gray hand that smashed towards the heavens. Ancestor Meng was extremely straightforward. He directly took action. The large hand crushed the gate like rotten weeds and swept it into the vast heaven and earth of the heavens. "You dare?" That Tao ancestor from the heavens shouted. The ancestor surnamed Meng said, "Why wouldn't I dare? When the heavens are in trouble, I don't see you all. Now, I don't need you all to tyrannically abuse others. Put away your Tao ancestor matter. If you dare corrode my descendants again, I'll kill you." Everyone was shaken. Previously, this ancestor was extremely peaceful, but now, he actually wanted to take action against the experts of the heavens. Moreover, he was so domineering that he directly wanted to kill the Tao ancestor. Taoist Jiu's eyes became hot. This ancestor didn't hesitate to do this for him. He didn't sense anything at first, thinking that the Tao ancestor of the heavens only wanted to suppress him. Now, he also sensed that there was an indescribable Tao ancestor energy circling around him. If it wasn't for ancestor Meng taking action, Taoist Jiu felt that he might have suffered a great setback. Perhaps the other party only wanted to teach him a lesson. He wouldn't kill him, but it would be enough to make him suffer. Now, ancestor Meng directly took action and stood up for him, threatening to kill the Tao ancestor. Sure enough, it was just as the legends said. This patriarch was a very good old man who cared for the younger generation. No matter how strong the enemy was, if they wanted to harm his disciples, he would still fight them while bathed in blood, supporting the younger generation to the sky. You dare? The Tao ancestor above was furious. The large golden hand suddenly smashed down to resist Ancestor Meng. However, at this time, Ancestor Meng's large hand struck into the heavens. He didn't want to destroy the world of the living and the Tao patterns of the heavens because of the terrifying energy fluctuations. Now, the large hand reached in without any misgivings. With a boom, it collided with the large golden hand first. In an instant, a golden rain of blood splashed. It was hard to imagine how powerful Ancestor Meng was. He actually directly smashed the large golden hand into pieces. That was a Tao ancestor, the founder of a system. Even if he wasn't the strongest on this path, he was still one of the few senior figures. You want to become enemies with the heavens? The Tao ancestor shouted angrily. Ancestor Meng said, "You still can't represent the heavens. You are but the founder of one of the systems, a quasi-immortal emperor. You are infinitely close to the realm of the end of the road. How can you dare to represent the heavens? Back then, the various worlds of the heavens asked for help, but you ignored them. Now, please disappear." With a boom, the golden blood of the heavens flew everywhere. The large hand was shattered by Ancestor Meng's fist imprint. It was simple and domineering. He didn't use any complicated secret techniques and just punched the Tao ancestor's palm. "Your surname is Meng, you are that person's guide." The Tao ancestor seemed to have come to a realization. Then, he released golden light and quickly closed the door to the heavens. "What about that person? Also, what are you guarding in the lower realm?" The Tao ancestor's final voice came. However, no one responded. Ancestor Meng didn't pay him any attention. The Tao ancestor seemed to be incomparably fearful. Without further delay, he completely disappeared. The world was silent. Everyone was shocked. The large hand that slowly retracted from the heavens actually disintegrated, turning into dust. It fluttered about and floated back into the depths of the reincarnation path. This scene shocked the hearts of Judeoyi and the others. They had a bad premonition. "Ancestor, what are you? I'm fine. If I sleep, I can still wait for a few years." "What's wrong? Are you waiting for that person? Where is he now?" Judeoyi asked. The Dog Emperor, the Rotten Corpse, and Chu Feng were also shocked. They wanted to know those secrets. In reality, there was no one who didn't want to know. "I'm waiting for him to come back, to see him one last time." The clay idol muttered in the depths of reincarnation. In the elder's eyes, no matter how powerful that person was, no matter what inconceivable domain he reached, he was still the youth in his eyes. He was still the same person from before, forever a child in his eyes. His innate nature had never changed. Even though everyone said that something unexpected might have happened to that person, the elder still believed that he had only walked too far, temporarily unable to find his way back. There would be a day when he would reappear. Perhaps he is too powerful, the regions he has walked through exceeding the understanding of the world. That is why, regardless of whether I don't think about him or not thinking about him, it's all useless against him. He can no longer sense anything. Perhaps only when he enters my domain and thinks about him can he produce a reaction. One day, he will return. Everyone was shaken. Where did that person go? What level did he reach? Creatures at the end of the path were powerful to the extreme. Even if they died and their Tao disappeared, as long as there was someone in this world who could remember them, this type of creature could still revive and reappear in this world. The so-called never forgetting, there will definitely be a response. However, all of this was useless against that person. Just where did he go? Just how high was his own level? Had he gone too far? Did he need the thoughts and senses of a cultivator at the level of the elder surnamed Meng to produce a reaction? The elder persevered and did not want to leave the world. Was it because of him that he ignited the coordinates to return? Billions of quadrillion universes and worlds could be said to be endless. When one reached a certain level and truly left, perhaps they would only feel that the heavens and worlds behind them were just bubbles in the darkness, or like fireflies. What the elder surnamed Meng was doing now, in the boundless darkness, in the sea of time that was so terrifying that it could devour beings of the supreme domain at any time, he ignited a flame, hoping to guide that person to find his way home and wait for him to return. Dust rose, and the sky was filled with light particles. What was that? Was that the elder's current state? He did not have a physical body. He was just dust. Was he still alive? The dog emperor was shocked. The decayed corpse's pupils shrank. He felt a chill in his heart. This was truly a pity. The Nine Daoi was afraid. He felt an unbearable pain. Such a powerful founder, a Dao ancestor-level figure on the same path, had ended up like this? No matter what happens to me, I will be here. I will illuminate the void with the flames of the way and wait for him to return. The elder would not leave. Even if all that was left was his will and the real him no longer existed, he was still like this. His will remained, waiting for him to return. Dust rose, emitting a gentle light. Then, it floated down from the sky, returning to the path of reincarnation. Chapter 1590. The old man's condition wasn't good. There was a serious problem with his physical body. Was it made of dust? The reincarnation path disappeared and the world became silent. Whether it was the dog emperor, the corpse, or Chu Feng and the others, they found it hard to accept. Judeoyi's face was pale. He felt incomparably sad. Patriarch Meng was actually in such a state. After so many years, it was likely he had only left behind a strand of thought. It was difficult to recover normally. He still wanted to see that person again, to see that youth from before. Otherwise, he would have long since disappeared. What had happened to his body? Judeoyi was incomparably pained. That was the pioneer of their system, the founder, the master of that person, yet he had fallen into such a miserable state. What kind of great battle was Patriarch Meng carrying out? How could his physical body and Dharma body disappear? How bitter was it? Only his unforgettable thoughts were still drifting in the reincarnation cycle. He came from the dust and was formed from the land of the Yang realm. The traces of the past pieced together the past him. His true body had already passed away. This kind of ending made Judeoyi feel like a knife was being twisted in his heart. He couldn't accept it. In his heart, this respectable old man, the pioneer of their system, shouldn't have such a sad ending. It made him grieve. "See you off, Patriarch," Chu Feng said. Patriarch Meng had already disappeared. Apparently, he couldn't stay in the world for long after his unexpected resurrection. Soon, he would fall into a deeper slumber. Yao Yao, Old Gu, and Zhou Shi walked over to silently send him off. He will definitely get better. The Patriarch's true body will revive. Wait for that person to return and save Patriarch Meng. Patriarch, burn your Tao flame and illuminate the dark void. Never forget to wait for him to reappear. In the end, he won't be without a return. You will definitely wait for him. Judeoyi actually shed tears and even growled in the end. He had experienced that special and cruel era, so he was far sadder than others. Now that he had revealed his true feelings, this was the first time he had lost control like this. Hot tears rolled down from his empty eye sockets. Chu Feng walked forward, not knowing how to comfort Judeoyi. In reality, when he saw that elder disappear, turn into dust and return to reincarnation, he also felt a bit disappointed and frustrated. In one's life, no matter how great one's background was or how unmatched one's ability was, in the end, it was still hard for one to escape death. Looking back at the past, what was worth cherishing and what should have been forgotten, waiting until the end, perhaps it would have already been silent. At this time, there were some immortal kings from other great worlds who were paying close attention. There were some who didn't belong to this system who were watching calmly. There were also some who were inseparable from this system, their emotions complicated, for example, the fallen immortal king race, precisely someone who broke away from this system, now also silently sending them off. Of course, there were also people who were hostile towards this system. Even Chu Feng, who was at the scene, could sense it. There was no need to even mention Nine Daoi. At the celestial king level, his senses were extremely sharp. He suddenly turned to look at the Yuan clan celestial king, the Four Tribulation Sparrow, and the others. Back then, all of you were also basking in the glory of this system. Even if you later switched to another system, you shouldn't forget your roots. Jiudaoyi said coldly. Those people's expressions were cold, not expressing anything. When one reached this type of state, words couldn't move them, let alone the fact that once some paths were chosen, there was already no turning back, simply impossible to change one's stance. Dao friend, restrain your grief. Even the most powerful of existences will fall one day, even the most unmatched existences will fall at some point. Nothing can last forever, no one can be glorious for eternity. All things in this world rise and fall, all things are predetermined. You and I should go with the flow. Although some people were once brilliant, they can only live in our memories. No, perhaps they won't even be able to stay in our memories for long. Their era has long ended. Forgetting when it's time to is the most rational choice. In the heavens above, an elder with 4 great tribulation halos on his back spoke from the clouds. This was precisely the 4 tribulation sparrow race's immortal king, his strength extremely great. He looked like he was comforting them, but there was actually sharpness hidden within. He was talking about the greater trend, as well as the cruel reality of ancestor Meng's true body's death, even more so pointing out that the era of that person had ended, something unexpected happened, that he wouldn't appear again. Indeed, Dao friend, restrain your grief and look forward. The world has already been unified, so why not take advantage of the situation and let go of past prejudices? Who will rise and fall is the same. In any case, you and I can't change the greater trend in the end. Those who once fought through all the heavens, perhaps they are extremely dazzling in our knowledge, but in the outer world, there will always be existences beyond our imagination. Once they awaken from that ancient ancestral land, even that person will disappear from our memories. Perhaps this is the truth. The Yuan race's immortal king spoke. He seemed very calm, but the fire in the depths of his eyes burned even more fiercely. He seemed to know and have guessed a few things. This race was colluding with the outer world's beings. Another immortal king said, "The world is too vast, the past, present, and future too deep. No one can investigate what lies beyond the eternal edge of darkness. What is a creature at the end of the road? When one reaches the end, the road ahead will be cut off, and all one will face is the boundless void of darkness. Some people want to go deeper, but it's actually a path of death, voluntarily entering the dark cave." The immortal kings spoke one after another. It seemed like they were exhorting, but they were actually targeting them. Since they had made their choice, their race wouldn't turn back. Jiudaoyi's expression was ice-cold. These immortal kings could be considered the peak fighting strength of an era, but now they had all fallen and submitted. They were absolutely unreliable. All of you are just immortal kings, yet you talk about the future after the end of the road. Those who don't know better would think that you are opening up a new system and becoming founding elders. How laughable! Jiudaoyi sneered. He continued, "What vast heaven and earth? What great world? What long past and present? Don't you all just want to rely on the outer world? Those who lead the way shouldn't speak so pompously. The merits and demerits of this era will be judged by future generations." The Dog Emperor also bared its broken canine teeth and said, "Although Ancestor Meng has passed away, and the situation of that person is unknown, there will still be future generations. If you all are so impatient, why don't we just get rid of you first? Jiudaui didn't like hearing such words. In his heart, Ancestor Meng was high and mighty, so he couldn't accept the fact that he had died. There wasn't much to talk about. Today was a battle, and Jiudaui couldn't be bothered to argue with the Yuan race and the Four Tribulation Sparrows. However, he was also angry, but with his status, he shouldn't be getting angry. He directly signaled Chu Feng. What did he mean? Chu Feng was a bit dazed. What are you standing there for? Jiudaui looked at him and secretly reminded him. Damn it! Chu Feng was speechless. The dirty work had come to him again. Jiudaui was unhappy, but he couldn't lower his status. Was he supposed to scold? Was it easy for him? I am Chu Feng, a powerhouse destined to be invincible throughout the ages. How can I scold people so casually? He cursed silently and communicated with Jiudaui with his eyes. You're the one. Jiudaui glared at him. Chu Feng's face twitched. In the end, he turned around and looked at the people on his side. Brother Chu, you're too dazzling like a blazing sun in the sky. You single-handedly eliminated hundreds of hunters and 30 foragers on the reincarnation road. You've truly shaken our generation. Ouyang Feng's spittle flew everywhere. He was full of smiles as he loudly praised Chu Feng. That was because he was a bit guilty. He could see a bad flavor in Chu Feng's eyes, so he took the initiative to flatter him. Long Yu, Ouyang Feng, Ouyang Delong, I'll give you a chance to perform now. Turn into the great Ouyang Scolder. Chu Feng secretly transmitted his voice and had the strange dragon display its specialty. Ouyang Feng wanted to curse out loud. You can't trick people like this. Jiudaui asked you to do the dirty work, and you directly assigned me to do it. This is going to cost me my life. What are you afraid of? Senior Jiudaui will give you benefits. Chu Feng secretly pressured him. Leading the way won't have a good ending. I at #%yen Ouyang Feng lived up to everyone's expectations and sprayed out his spittle like a torrential storm. Everyone was shaken. Someone dared to scold the Yuan race and the Fourth Tribulation Sparrow race here, as well as criticize an immortal king. He was truly courageous. Young people should be driven. I'll bestow upon you a Dao talisman. Jiudaui stroked his beard and directly inserted an immortal talisman into Ouyang Dalong's body. This was a mark on him. Anyone who dared to touch the strange dragon would have to think twice. Moreover, no one knew what kind of power this talisman had. Ouyang Delong patted his chest in encouragement, spittle flying everywhere as he said, Senior, I can still fight with the races of the heavens for 3 days. He wanted to curse for 3 days? Even the corners of Jiudaui's mouth twitched. This was a bit too much. Was he such a calculative person? Did he need to find someone to curse for 3 days? Half a day was enough. Let's see who's the real deal, an immortal king said. All the experts of the heavens had arrived. There had already been many battles before, and if there were no accidents, there would be a result within these 2 days. The great unification was destined. This old man will also participate today. I won't use this spear and will only use my own strength to exchange pointers. After saying this, Jiudaui threw away the spear in his hand and gave it to the Dog Emperor for safekeeping. He directly soared into the sky. I've come to discuss the Tao with you, an immortal king in the outer realm said. With the great unification, it would be difficult for all the giants to stay out of it. Which system won, which great realm would be honored, and who could obtain the celestial emperor's position were all related to enormous benefits. Obviously, the Yuan race, the Fourth Tribulation Sparrow, and many other ancient races and orthodoxies wouldn't give up. This kind of battle wouldn't appear in the mortal world. They would have to fight in the outer heavens. Otherwise, the starry sky might collapse and a great world would be destroyed. Rumble. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the mortal world. Blood-colored phenomena appeared in all directions. These were only the remnants of the aftershocks and not the true impact of energy. It was a spectacle created by an incomparable battle between immortal kings. It didn't take long. Jiudaui repelled his opponent, but he didn't retreat and faced the enemy again. In the end, he won 3 battles in a row. Only then did he return to the two-realm battlefield in the Yang realm. His chest rose and fell as he gasped for breath. I'm old. My true bones and flesh aren't here anymore. It took me so long to defeat the enemy. He looked like he was very dissatisfied. Everyone was speechless. However, this was also a type of intimidation. It made many people's hair stand on end. The old man's skin wasn't his true body, and now, only his skin was left. This made many people feel restraining fear. Even though some ancient existences were quite conceited and believed that they could suppress Jiudaui, it was hard to say what would happen if his flesh and true bones returned. For a moment, everyone was in awe. Some giants were convinced that even though the complete Jiudaui couldn't reach the level of a system's founder, he was definitely an unparalleled giant among immortal kings. This old man was one of the 800 disciples in the past. What kind of great scenes haven't I seen before? I haven't died in 100 battles. Why would I be afraid of you small fries? So what if I'm crippled? I'm still not scared. Jiudaui spoke again and again. Today, he actually directly revealed his identity and shocked all the realms of the heavens. Are there any old soldiers who haven't withered yet? He roared towards the sky. There are. In the outer world, someone loudly and sonorously responded. This scene directly shocked the heavens and stunned all the giants. Everyone's expressions changed. Chapter 1591. There really are still old friends. Jiudao-Yi's tears almost rolled down his face. How many people from his era could truly survive and reach this era? Now, he clearly heard the reply and immediately knew who it was. It was his old brother from back then. There were still people who hadn't withered and could fight with him again in this era. Everyone in the surroundings felt a headache coming on. This was especially true for the Yuan race and the 4 tribulation sparrow. Even the powerful immortal kings had ugly expressions and their bodies were stiff. One of these old monsters was enough to torment people to death. What if a group of them jumped out? The so-called opponents might as well just commit suicide. 800 disciples. This number made many people's scalps go numb. If such a large group of old monsters returned, who could contend against them? There was no doubt that these 800 disciples who could reach this era were all extremely powerful. The weak couldn't live for more than a few eras. Don't worry, even the 800 old soldiers who followed that person can't all survive. It's said that almost all of them died in the great battle back then. Only a few are left. An immortal king said in a low voice, revealing this fact. One could imagine how bitter the battle back then was. Almost all the disciples who followed that person had died. Even if they survived, they were all crippled. There shouldn't be more than 20 to 30 of them. Moreover, after so many years, I reckon only 2 or 3 of them are left, someone added. However, there were also people who mentioned that although the 800 disciples were all gravely injured, they were all baptized by that person's immortal emperor blood and obtained great benefits. This was a bit terrifying. Sigh, this emperor really wants to go and rebuke the wind and clouds, but I really can't fight anymore. The glorious days that belong to me will never return. The dog emperor sighed. Seeing Jiudao-Yi so glorious and high-spirited, the dog emperor was a bit sad. Its muddy eyes lacked a powerful spirit. Its condition was indeed very poor. If it really had to fight, it could probably only use a few techniques. Its blood energy would be exhausted and it wouldn't be able to win for a long time. However, it was really unwilling. It roared at the sky and said, "In my era, can this emperor's peerless state really not appear again?" Then, it angrily carved Tao patterns. One could tell at a glance that it was some kind of large-scale summoning domain. It wanted to condense its scattered true spirit and make it return to its body. Back then, its soul light was damaged, and its injuries were very serious. Now, it hoped to be able to guide some of its soul light to use in the great battle. In an instant, ghosts wailed and gods howled. Sand and stones flew about in the two-realm battlefield as all sorts of remnant souls and mutants were summoned to wreak havoc in this desolate area of the Yang realm. Everyone was stunned. This dog's cultivation was extremely profound, and its domain methods were extremely terrifying. This expanse of Tao patterns shone and extended towards many great worlds, affecting many ancient battlefields. All the important locations where the Dog Emperor had participated in the battle were now marked in the summoning runes. It's really effective. Have you found some? The Dog Emperor's eyes shone with a terrifying light. It was shocked. For many years, it had set up a summoning domain from time to time in an attempt to reassemble its remaining true spirit. However, the results were minimal. All this time, it hadn't been able to find many fragments of its true spirit. Right now, in the red fur whirlwind between the black lightning, there was a true spirit flying over. It was clearly him, baring its fangs, its mind in a muddled state as it threw itself over. This was a remnant spirit and didn't have much of its own consciousness. However, once it merged with the main body, it would greatly increase the Dog Emperor's strength. Dog thing, where have you been all these years? Do you have any more? The Dog Emperor cried out. Its speech was somewhat incoherent as it scolded itself for no reason. Everyone. Some people revealed strange expressions, and even some immortal kings wanted to stop it, but in the end they restrained themselves. That domain was too mysterious. Moreover, Joey was carrying a bronze spear to protect the black dog, and the rotten corpse was also eyeing it covetously. Even a strand of my dog fur has been guided back. The Dog Emperor was puzzled. Amidst the flying sand and stones, a pitch-black dog fur fell from the sky and landed beside it, causing it to be momentarily entranced. Very soon, it raised its head. What was that? A liquid dripped onto its body, and powerful active energy surged. The Dog Emperor was shaken, but it didn't stop it. That was because this kind of energy, this feeling of vitality, was all too familiar to it. This was its own true blood. How is this possible? It's actually the black dog's blood. The Dog Emperor was truly stunned. It was summoning its true spirit, so how did it receive its own true blood instead? Didn't this thing wither the moment it left its body? During the tragic battle all those years ago, it had burned 90% of it. Now it was being showered with dog blood. Which great emperor above is this changing my fate? The Dog Emperor was trembling, because this was just too unimaginable, exceeding his expectations. Not only that, but a large piece of black dog fur fell from it, and the true blood was flowing down from it. Around them, the immortal king's eyes grew cold, but when they saw Joey holding a battle spear, they stopped in their tracks. At the same time, the immortal kings who wanted to attack looked up at the sky with incomparable fear. Who had sent this? Had it really been summoned back by the black dog? Not likely. If one thought about it, this was a little terrifying. Could it be that the celestial emperors have returned to help me? The Dog Emperor was excited and wanted to shout. But in an instant it calmed down again. It couldn't be the three celestial emperors. They weren't in the present world. Moreover, if the three celestial emperors had collected its fur from the past, they wouldn't have only given it to it today. Back then, the battle had reached the most brutal point, and its physical body had exploded. This large piece of fur had separated from its monarch body at that time. This is a small half of its body. There is true blood, as well as large chunks of flesh. It looks quite fresh, carrying powerful vitality. Great Tao symbols flickered about, stored within the flesh. This really is good stuff. Nine Dowie sighed in admiration. The Dog Emperor raised its head, and was about to nod and accept the praise. In the end, Joey said, "Great tonic. Black dog meat was good stuff, great tonic. Woof! Roar!" The Dog Emperor opened its bloody mouth, and almost swallowed Joey. Fortunately, the old man's skin reacted quickly and dodged. The Dog Emperor caught its own black dog skin. There was indeed flesh on it, and there was true blood hidden on it. This was almost equivalent to a small half of its body. Even though its vitality was a bit damaged, the return of so many true bodies still made its eyes shine with divine light. After a simple look and careful sensing, and after confirming that there were no problems, the black dog's skin shone and immediately covered its body, becoming one with it. This emperor has returned. The me at the peak of my power, filled with the aura of youth. The most powerful emperor of the golden era has revived today. The dog emperor roared towards the sky, incomparably excited. Soon, its dog nose continuously moved as if it had smelled something. Dogs were creatures with innately sharp noses, let alone a self-proclaimed emperor. The great Tao runes on its nose were incomparably complex, and it could penetrate through the great world to smell all kinds of scent. The smell of insects, it muttered inwardly. It had smelled some aura from the true blood and fur. Then, its mind trembled, and it recalled the owner of this scent from its memories. Its pupils contracted as it guessed who it was. Divine Emperor! In the past, the peerless emperor of the divine Silkworm Ridge was thought to have died and was buried in the void. However, it actually didn't die and later fell into darkness. After several great eras, the Dog Emperor had once discovered traces of the Divine Emperor during the Soul River battle. Daring to call himself the Divine Emperor, one could imagine how heaven-defying that person was in the past. However, that person still fell into darkness. It was a pity. At that time, the Dog Emperor was still sighing inwardly. Who would have thought that at this critical moment, its fur and true blood returned, and it was actually a gift from the Divine Emperor. It should be known that the Divine Emperor was one of the giants at the end of the Soul River, and he was actually helping it like this? The Dog Emperor was shocked, but it didn't dare to show any strange expression. Undercover? It guessed inwardly. The Divine Emperor had revived and found his true self from the darkness? This was the Dog Emperor's thought. This was a bit dangerous. Even though the Divine Emperor's cultivation was unfathomable, there was still a possibility that he would be exposed and bring death upon himself. No wonder the old bug was so powerful last time, but he didn't do anything to me. I think he must have tricked someone from the Soul River. The Dog Emperor thought about it and felt more and more that the Divine Emperor was acting strangely, as if he was doing them a favor. That old guy is unfathomable. The Dog Emperor's thoughts were endless. In the end, it didn't worry about the divine silkworm, because the main sacrifice was taken away by the female empress, and the entire Soul River might fall into the Divine Emperor's hands. However, there should be other terrifying controllers behind the Soul River, right? Come, who wants to fight me? Evil creature of the Yuan clan, get over here, and the fourth tribulation sparrow, crawl over here. The Dog Emperor called out, and with one step, he flew into the sky and arrived outside the firmament. Now, although there was a gap between him and the supreme giants among the celestial kings, he was still a celestial king who could fight for a long time, and he wasn't weak either. Boom! A great battle broke out in the outer realm, accompanied by terrifying dog barks. The battle was unusually fierce. Not long after, two celestial kings were defeated and fled. The third challenger was also stepped on by the Dog Emperor's time runes, and his body was smashed to pieces. He also fled. Huff woof! The Dog Emperor panted. He had returned, and he had also won 3 battles. Not bad, it's like you're on steroids. You actually won consecutively. The decayed corpse complimented. What steroids? It's black dog blood. Jiudao corrected. I'll swallow you all alive. The Dog Emperor gritted his teeth. I'm the Kuan-Mi true immortal. Who wants to fight with me? A true immortal appeared, and his opponents were naturally evolvers of the same level. Celestial kings wouldn't participate. I'll do it. A man shrouded in a halo walked out. It was the Feather Emperor from the Yang realm, known as the Undefeated Legend. Chu Feng's pupils shrank as he watched from afar. This man was related to Qin Luoyin's previous incarnation, Fairy Qingshi. They were from the same generation. Boom! A great battle broke out, and it didn't take long. The undefeated Feather Emperor won, subduing a true immortal. Everyone praised his decisiveness and his beautiful victory. Let me tell you, the ancestor of the undefeated Feather Emperor's lineage is also here. He might be a giant among the celestial kings, and he might even be related to that self-proclaimed celestial emperor 9 million years ago. Old Gu moved closer and told Chu Feng a piece of news. In this era, the Yang realm had a celestial emperor calendar. 9 million years ago, a mysterious expert had appeared and called himself the Emperor of the world. Of course, his strength wasn't enough to become an emperor, and it was just a title of honor. Who wants to fight with me? A quasi-great universe realm entity appeared. In the end, Yao Yao came down and easily suppressed him. A sparkling, white, lily-white hand grabbed that person in the blink of an eye. This shocked everyone. Unrivaled at the same level? Her performance was too breathtaking. Ouyang Toad told Chu Feng that this was the 9th time Yao Yao had come down. Beings close to the rotten universe weren't her match. Obviously, the Celestial Emperor's position might be decided today. The competition between the realms was fierce. From celestial kings to true immortals, all evolvers below the rotten universe would fight to see which realm performed the best. Chu Feng said softly, "That means I might come down? Am I destined to be the finale? I'll sweep away the outstanding talents of this era and suppress the heroes of the heavens." Chapter 1592. Although Chu Feng was speaking in a low voice, what kind of place was this? All the experts heard him, and the older evolvers only laughed. Who would take it seriously? He said he wanted to sweep through all the outstanding talents, but in the end it was only limited to his generation. For some of the old monsters, this couldn't affect the overall situation. But how could they know that Chu Feng wanted to suppress all the heavens for a long-term goal? He was targeting all the old monsters from the opposing camp. Even now, he wasn't someone his generation could only keep in check. He needed some famous experts from ancient times to come out. How many people were like him? He was still a youth, but he could already kill reincarnation hunters and the even more terrifying foragers. Moreover, he had killed a large group of people by himself. "I, Zhong Tian, want to exchange pointers with you," someone shouted. It was a young man from the outside world. His clothes fluttered in the wind, giving him a heroic appearance. He stood on a fiery red flying sword, his temperament outstanding and celestial chi curling around him. He wasn't convinced at all. How would he know who was stronger and who was weaker without a fight? Although he already knew that Chu Feng had killed a large group of pursuers from the reincarnation road, he didn't believe that it was Chu Feng's own strength. In reality, most people didn't think that Chu Feng had defeated the reincarnation hunters and foragers by himself. There had to be something else to rely on. Otherwise, if 800 hunters and a few dozen foragers moved out at the same time, who would be able to sweep through all opponents of the same cultivation realm and wipe them out as easily as crushing dry weeds? "You're not good enough," Chu Feng said. He didn't hide anything and directly commented. The other was very powerful, but he was definitely not his match. He was confident that he could kill this sword cultivator who was close to the Heng generation with just his fist. "You." The young man was unconvinced. Beside him, an old Taoist with white hair and a ruddy complexion said, "Stand down." The old Taoist had his disciple retreat. He could see at a glance that Chu Feng was extremely powerful. Although his talented disciple was strong and had few rivals in his world, he was definitely not a match for Chu Feng. The old Taoist was an evolver at the true immortal level and had very sharp eyes. He couldn't watch his disciple suffer a great setback. "I'll fight you." At this time, another young man spoke up. It was a young man with long brown hair and coarse clothes. He looked like an ascetic. He held a thick purple-gold demon-subduing pestle in his hand. The divine light was like lightning. "Back off." This time, before Chu Feng could say anything, an old man in linen clothes spoke up and pulled his disciple behind him. This was also a young outstanding talent from the outer realms, and he was famous in his own great world? It was hard to meet a worthy opponent, but after coming here? He was immediately ordered to retreat by his elders, not allowing him to enter the arena. These perfected immortal-level old monsters all had very sharp eyes. Could they see through Chu Feng's terrifying state? He didn't want his disciple to be harmed. That's it? 9 young experts spoke up one after another. There were men and women, and they all wanted to have a great battle with Chu Feng, but in the end they were all stopped by their own sex. He was immediately stopped. No one dared to enter the arena. No one wanted to fight against Chu Feng. All the races and sects in the Yang realm were paying attention. Everyone was incomparably shocked. Demon King Chu Feng was indeed amazing. He alone had intimidated the outstanding talents of all realms. One had to know that these people were heaven-bestowed beings from the outer realms. These people could run amok in their respective great worlds and look down on all evolvers of the same generation. They were destined to be world-shaking characters in the future. But now they were all intimidated by one person and were stopped by his elders. They didn't dare to let them fight with Demon King Chu. One person intimidated all realms. Chu Feng didn't even need to enter the battlefield to make everyone at the same level apprehensive. He had subdued him without even fighting, causing everyone to reveal odd expressions. Nine Da smiled and stroked his sparse beard. He nodded and said, not bad. Even though we don't have many people in this system, we have one thing in common, and that is that we can fight. One person can fight 10, and one person can fight 100. These words made the group of old monsters' expressions turn unkind. Their gazes were very cold, but they didn't say anything. Even Chu Feng was speechless. He was very dissatisfied and felt that he had gone too far. Senior 9, you didn't teach me anything. We're not from the same system. Chu Feng didn't hold back at all. That was because he really hadn't learned this world-suppressing trump card. In the heavens, the immortal kings of all realms had relaxed expressions. Why did they find this little demon King Chu Feng somewhat pleasing to the eye? Then, the immortal kings glanced provocatively at 9 Daoists. Although they didn't say anything, their eyes were full of charm. You damn child, how can you say that? The times have changed and there are problems with the world. It's no longer compatible with us. If you want to cultivate our system, you have to have great willpower, boldness, and an invincible heart. You also need to have supreme comprehension. Otherwise, you won't be able to cultivate it. Of course, once you succeed, the other systems are all noobs. 9 Daoist's face was full of arrogance. This was truly hateful. Many murderous gazes shot over. Clearly, the old man was a bit arrogant. At this moment, he was being stared at by the terrifying gazes of the various immortal kings. He quickly laughed it off and let this matter pass. The Dog Emperor opened his mouth and said, "This system has a current successor. There's the Empress's inheritor." He grinned and looked at Yao Yao. In reality, 9 Daoist had realized this problem when he finished speaking just now. He was rarely serious. He looked at Yao Yao, nodded and said, "Very well. Who said no one dares to enter the field?" "I want to think it over," said a creature in midair. The sudden voice surprised everyone. Now, there was actually someone who dared to enter the field and fight against Chu Feng? With a buzz, a fiery red sun appeared in the sky. A fierce bird tore through the void and swooped down with boundless energy pressure. Its body wasn't very big. It looked no more than a meter long, but it was extremely mystical. Its body was shrouded by 4 special calamity halos. This was a 4th tribulation sparrow. The halos formed by the 4 calamity halos indicated that their race had crossed 4 eras. They used the special energy produced by the Great Calamity to form protective halos. A 4th tribulation sparrow? Chu Feng's gaze was cold. This race wasn't kind. It was suspected that they had defected to the forces beyond the heavens, and were leading the way. However, he could also see that this fourth tribulation sparrow was indeed very strong. Just like him, it had 1 foot in the immemorial realm, and could become a powerhouse at any time. Moreover, this fourth tribulation sparrow was a peerless powerhouse of the Hung generation. It was a true celestial venerable Hung who was on the verge of breaking through and could break through to a higher realm at any time. "Are you sure you want to fight me?" Chu Feng's gaze was cold. If they really fought, he was sure that he would slap this fourth tribulation sparrow to death. Of course, he could also leave its corpse intact and roast and eat it. After all, it was a rare species. Yes, the fourth tribulation sparrow was very conceited. It flapped its wings and tore open the sky. It looked down at Chu Feng without a trace of fear. It really wanted to dive down and kill Chu Feng. The immortal king of the fourth tribulation sparrow race said, if you don't fight when you're young, when you really reach our age, you won't be willing to move. Many eras will pass when you go into seclusion. If you don't shed blood and fight, you won't have a chance in the future. If you want to rise up, who doesn't climb out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood? If you don't fight in the present, you'll seem very useless. Then, he added, of course sparring is sparring, but it's best if you show mercy. In reality, he had already left behind the true blood of that fourth tribulation sparrow. Even if there was an accident with his immortal king aptitude, he could revive that junior of his race. As if he sensed something, Chu Feng raised his head and said, "My punches are very heavy. Once they explode, their true souls will most likely be destroyed forever. They won't be able to revive anymore." The young fourth tribulation sparrow snorted in disdain. He didn't come to die. He came to win. "You and I will use our own methods, but we can't use external power," said the young fourth tribulation sparrow. By now, it already understood that Chu Feng had used some kind of unknown great killing weapon to sweep through the heroes of the reincarnation road and wipe out a group of people. That wasn't his own power. Sure. Chu Feng nodded. Then, he looked at the various races and said, "Is there only one fourth tribulation sparrow? Does anyone else want to go?" "I'll go after you guys finish fighting," someone really responded. It was a powerhouse of the Hung generation from a great realm outside the realm. He could almost be considered to have stepped into the realm of great figures. This Hung generation could break through at any time. 9 flying swords appeared around him. Sword chi cut through the void and flickered with dazzling splendor. It was like 9 true dragons flying across the sky. It was quite astonishing. He was the personal disciple of a certain perfected immortal. "Count me in as well. We'll fight in a while." Another voice sounded. This person had a head full of bright silver hair. Even his pupils were silver. He wore armor and was covered with all kinds of secret treasures. This person came from a world that had an evolutionary system with weapons as its foundation. His entire body, even his flesh and blood, were fused with all kinds of magical treasures and weapons. 3 now. Then, you guys can attack together. You are really arrogant, the fourth tribulation sparrow said coldly. He was just about to fly into a rage, but he sneered in the next moment. "Fine, since you want to do this, I can fulfill your wish." At this point, he looked at the other 2 and said, "Since someone is so arrogant and domineering, why don't we just follow his wishes and send him on his way? Then, the 3 of us can spar again." Obviously, the other 2 were also angered by Chu Feng's disrespect. Upon hearing this, they said, "Okay, since he likes it, we'll send him on his way." These people weren't stubborn or pretentious. Since he wanted to die, they would fulfill his wish. This was their common thought at this moment. "If possible, I'll call another fellow cultivator." The fourth tribulation sparrow looked at Chu Feng. "Sure." Chu Feng nodded. He wasn't afraid of anyone at the same level as him. Today, he wanted to test his limits and see if these Hun cohorts could do anything to him. Fellow cultivator from the Yuan tribe, come. The fourth tribulation sparrow shouted. It was clear that both this fourth tribulation sparrow and the young expert from the Yuan tribe weren't from the Yang realm. They were from the main branch of a family in the outer realms. Okay. The person from the Yuan tribe arrived. He was tall and imposing like a demonic god. Thick white mist surrounded him as he strode over, causing the ground to tremble. In fact, these four people were much older than Chu Feng. Although they were called young, that was only because of their appearance. In reality, they were all evolvers over 100 years old. If they were the same age as Chu Feng, it would be difficult for them to compare to his cultivation. Come, I'll set up a domain. The four of us will guard the four directions and suppress this fiend together. The fourth tribulation sparrow spoke with cold killing intent. He looked at Chu Feng and asked if he dared to enter the domain. Why wouldn't I? Chu Feng was calm. The fourth tribulation sparrow said coldly, this domain of mine has a long history. Many eras ago, it was called the Immortal Execution Ground. Don't regret this. I'm ready to suppress all of you at any time. Chu Feng's reply was very straightforward. Arrogant, let's begin. The fourth tribulation sparrow shouted. The other three also released terrifying energy. Frightening mushroom clouds rose from their bodies and radiated into the sky. At this moment, the whole world was watching. Whether it was in the Yang realm or in the sky, evolvers from all races and sects were quietly observing the battle that was about to begin. Chapter 1593. Whether it was in the Yang realm or the outer realms, countless evolvers were paying attention to this battle that was about to begin. In a sense, this could already be considered the strongest clash of the new generation. How would one evaluate who was stronger and who was weaker in each world? Naturally, it would be explained through a true confrontation. The struggle between the top experts of each era was the most convincing. It's that demon Chu Feng again? These were people who didn't like Chu Feng. Their faces stiffened and their gazes became even more unfriendly after seeing his end. Demon Chu is invincible. Obviously, these were people who favored Chu Feng. It could even be said that they were especially fanatical. There were many such people in the Yang realm who were quietly waiting for this battle to begin through magical mirrors. Invincible. Chu Ying Xiaoxiao, whose silver hair reached her waist, was one of the fanatical believers of the quasi-immortal race. She clenched her fists and shouted. Her brother Ying Wudi's face darkened. He wanted to say something but couldn't open his mouth. A great battle had broken out in the two-realm battlefield. The fourth tribulation sparrow was fairly ferocious. It opened its mouth and let out a long whistle. A terrifying beam of light shot out from its beak, shattering the firmament and suppressing the world. For a moment, even the order of heaven and earth froze. Even the essence energy of the entire world was sucked dry. The fourth tribulation sparrow was incomparably powerful. The beam of light it spat out turned into a Tao diagram. It was densely packed with runes that covered the firmament and the surrounding fields. It had laid out a domain diagram. This was the key to the immortal execution field. The domain diagram stretched across the sky as though it had cut off the past and present. It made time unstable and intermittent. Great Tao fragments were everywhere, pouring down from the sky like a waterfall or a river of stars. They hung down and sealed off the surrounding field. The vast world shook violently without a sound. In the distance, an unknown number of majestic mountains that towered into the clouds collapsed. The earth sank and magma surged thousands of meters into the air. It was as though doomsday had arrived. The scene on this battlefield was extremely terrifying. All of these scenes were merely the aftermath of the domain diagrams outside. The aura inside the real battlefield was even more astonishing. The immortal extermination domain diagram floated in the sky. Great Tao runes fell down from the diagram like silk ribbons and waterfalls, enveloping all directions and trapping Chu Feng within. The four-tribulation sparrow was incomparably resplendent, and its entire body was densely covered in patterns. Its body was hidden in the four great tribulation halos, and it was adjusted to its strongest state. It personally guarded the east like a great sun, illuminating the past, present, and future. Even time was severed by the protective talisman. The energy in his body continued to evaporate, forming countless terrifying mushroom clouds in the sky. The young expert of the Yuan race was guarding the west. He held a long, pitch-black blade in his hand. It was the immortal slaying blade, which was known to be specialized in killing soul light. Even immortals would find it difficult to escape from this blade. His figure was tall and incomparably imposing, like a demonic god. The cold light in his eyes was like lightning, piercing through the immortal mist as it tore through the sky, giving off an extremely powerful feeling of pressure, making those of the same generation feel suffocated. He and the four-tribulation sparrow were both evolvers who had cultivated for more than 100 years. Chi. Immortal light illuminated the world. In the south was a young man with an otherworldly temperament and 9 flying swords floating around him. At this moment, he was no longer graceful. His entire being had become fierce like an unsheathed immortal sword. His body crushed the void and shattered the surrounding space. This man was extremely powerful and was guarding the south. Rumble. In the north, treasure light rushed into the sky as supreme energy tore apart the firmament. That was the energy fluctuations of a magic treasure. It was simply too powerful, and it came from a silver-haired man with secret treasures all over his body. He came from a terrifying system where secret treasures were fused with the body, supreme weapons were fused with the flesh, and even his internal organs and bones had been replaced by magic treasures that could evolve. This person was, without a doubt, a heaven-bestowed existence from a certain great world, and was peerless among his peers. A small part of his body had been replaced by the mother gold. It could be said to be sturdy and immortal. Even if he were to stand there and let others casually attack him, it would be difficult to injure him. The immortal execution ground enveloped the heaven and earth. The four young experts could be considered peerless figures of their generation, and all of them were of the Hung generation. The appearance of an Hung-level entity was enough to be recorded in the annals of history. Now, 4 experts had arrived together to guard the 4 directions in order to kill Chu Feng. How could this not become the focus of attention and cause a storm in the world? Kill! A great battle erupted. The 4 experts fused with the domain diagram in the sky and merged themselves into this terrifying killing domain. They borrowed the power of the immortal execution ground to strangle Chu Feng. Boom! In the outside world, people saw countless rays of light rushing up and a sea of symbols flickering like a sea of stars descending. There was also a dense cobweb-like order that pierced through the heaven and earth. This was truly a vicious land, a land of death. Normally speaking, creatures of the same level would be immediately ground into meat paste and turned into ashes upon entering. The immortal execution ground was famous in a certain era, shocking the ancients and dazzling the contemporaries. There was no one in the world who wasn't afraid of it. It was created to kill peerless experts. Even the Dog Emperor's pupils constricted at this moment. That was because it recalled some ancient scenes that belonged to its era. Crack! Several large holes appeared in the sky as all kinds of order symbols flowed out, causing the world outside the immortal execution ground to become tattered. It was an incomparably terrifying scene of destruction. Aou, outside the immortal execution ground, ghosts wept and gods howled. The mysterious power of the domain was too terrifying. It drew forth countless orders and even the true spirits of various gods and ghosts. There was no light in the world as sand and stones flew everywhere. The red-haired whirlwind whistled past, followed by a rain of blood. The supreme energy leaked into the outside world, causing the sky and earth to become tattered and the void to split open. One could easily imagine how bitter the main battlefield covered by the immortal execution ground's domain diagram was. It's truly a heavenly dragon traversing the sky, a peerless struggle for hegemony. In the distance, an old monster sighed with emotion. He was definitely not a match for those youngsters when he was young. Existences at the Hung level were extremely rare, no matter which realm they were in. They could be counted since ancient times, and most of them had already become legends. They had become a part of history and were almost impossible to see in the present world. Now, the 4 Hung-level existences were attacking Chu Feng together. The whole world was casting sidelong glances at them as countless people watched the battle nervously. At this time, the 4 Tribulation Sparrow and the other 3 experts had arrived in front of Chu Feng one after another with the help of the domain power. They had clashed head-on with him, and had truly turned the sky and earth upside down. Kill. It was the 4 Tribulation Sparrow's turn again. She flapped her wings and flew toward Chu Feng while riding on the mysterious rune flames from the east. For a moment, the order symbols were like a raging wave beating against the shore as they filled the entire battlefield. Chu Feng wasn't bound in place. He could break through the so-called domains as long as he wanted to because he had started his career researching this field. From a certain perspective, his talents in domains were superior to evolution. Boom! Countless rune beams rushed up between the heaven and earth. Chu Feng borrowed the immortal execution ground's energy and transformed it into his own murderous light to tear apart the binding ground. Additionally, he brandished his fists, erupting with energy like a broken dam and a starry river hanging upside down. There was an aura of deathly stillness amidst the brilliance. Bang! The 4 Tribulation Sparrow was sent flying and its blood was in turmoil. It couldn't take it anymore. It had already clashed head-on with Chu Feng many times, but unexpectedly, the other party didn't show any signs of weakening. One had to know that the 4 experts were taking turns to attack him and had even borrowed the power of the domain. Chi. The sword radiance was like a rainbow as it tore through the clouds and moon and split the firmament. 9 flying swords descended from the sky like a world-destroying light. They looked dazzling but contained boundless murderous power that destroyed everything in their way. It was the young man with an outstanding temperament like a true immortal. His attacks were extremely terrifying and incomparably incisive. Behind Chu Feng, a 5-colored beam of light rushed out and transformed into a wheel of light. With a boom, it suppressed the 9 immortal swords and was about to strike them down. This was the wonderful 7 treasures technique. However, he had only found 5 of the world's rare materials and hadn't reached perfection yet. However, he was able to deduce his own path of the great Tao. Moreover, the 5 peerless treasures made the wheel of light boundless as it swept through the 9 flying swords. Kill! The Yuan race expert rushed over with the immortal beheading blade in his hand. The pitch-black blade was like a black hole that could suck in one's soul. It was an extremely terrifying sight. Chu Feng's eyes were cold. He held a long, snow-white blade formed from one of the 3 seeds as he clashed head-on with the immortal beheading blade. Sparks flew in all directions amidst clanging sounds. Countless order runes collapsed and a section of the pitch-black blade was cut off. Chu Feng's blade energy was like a torrential river as it surged forth. In the end, the snow-white blade energy cut through the Yuan race's Hung rank youth's shoulder and almost cut it in half. Immortal execution ground, revive. The 4th Tribulation Sparrow's expression changed. He activated the domain with all his might and was going to rely on this supreme killing domain from ancient legends to destroy the enemy. Although the original domain diagram was no longer complete, it was enough to activate it at their realm. Rumble! The sky collapsed and the earth split apart. Ghosts wept and gods howled as the entire battlefield collapsed. Energy boiled over and divinity granules and ancestral Taoist matter overflowed. Unfortunately, the 4th Tribulation Sparrow was disappointed. The domain couldn't lock down Chu Feng, nor could it injure him. Chu Feng was like a swimming fish as he moved about in the immortal execution ground. He evaded all kinds of killing tribulations and entered and left as he pleased. He appeared and disappeared from time to time, drifting erratically. Join forces! The fourth tribulation sparrow transmitted his voice. If they were to attack one by one, they wouldn't be able to take down Chu Feng. The next moment, the four experts attacked at the same time instead of taking turns to attack. However, Chu Feng's speed was too fast. He was like a specter or an archaic phantom as he weaved about and attacked. He would retreat after coming into contact with a few people, but at times, he would lock onto one person and attack fiercely. He was peerlessly tyrannical and ferocious. Even four experts can't kill him? I don't believe it. Someone in the outside world whispered. Has Demon King Chu become a spirit? Why isn't he defeated? He actually withstood the combined attack of four Heng rank entities. He's truly terrifying. The people with enmity were all shocked. Although they had already overestimated Chu Feng's strength, they didn't expect him to be even stronger than they had imagined. Do you see? This is my brother, Chu Feng. Who dares to contend against him? I didn't take the blame for him in vain. He and I can be called the peerless duo. Ouyang Dalong, the former Long Yu and the Ouyang Toad of the past, was now spitting saliva in all directions as if he was in charge of everything. Don't you have any shame? Old Gu shot him a sidelong glance and said unhappily, You stole my words. I should be the one among the peerless duo. Ouyang Yu was stunned. This red-lipped, white-teethed old monster was truly shameless. At this time, a shocking change took place on the battlefield. The battle was about to come to an end. An Hung-level genius is nothing more than this, Chu Feng said coldly. Regardless of whether it was in the past, present, or future, those of the Hung generation were all heavenly geniuses. But now they were about to be defeated. Chu Feng's blood energy surged. He became stronger and stronger as he fought. It was as if he would never run out of energy. He fought the four experts alone and became even more ferocious, forcing them to retreat. Boom! After Chu Feng's ultimate punch, the fourth tribulation sparrow's face turned deathly pale. It was as if he had been struck by a great Tao mountain. With a puff, he coughed up large mouthfuls of blood and was sent flying. Moreover, his body glowed in midair and gradually expanded. Then, he actually exploded. The fourth tribulation sparrow had been defeated. The main reason was that Chu Feng had raised his strength to the limit. He had used his trump card and condensed thousands of attacks into one move. He wanted to use this final move to decide life and death. Kill! Chu Feng let out a low roar and charged forward with his blade. He caught up to the Hung generation youth of the Yuan race. Boundless Tao light drowned out everything in front of him. With a soft ripping sound, he cut off his opponent's head. Boom! He wanted to hack down again, but the Yuan race's true immortal took action and snatched his body back. Chu Feng's eyes were cold. He passed through the bloody mist and rushed towards the silver-haired man to kill him. With dang-dang sounds, the man whose flesh had been replaced by the mother gold weapons frowned and revealed a pained expression. His undying precious body was full of holes and was about to be pierced through. What kind of monster was this? He really wanted to roar. Facing a terrifying opponent like Chu Feng, he truly felt a sense of helplessness. Yun Tuo, admit defeat. Retreat. An old scholar shouted from the back. If he continued to fight, even if his entire body was covered in mother gold, this youth would still be beaten to pieces. Chu Feng had 2 Hing Dao fruits. It wasn't as simple as 1 + 1. The superimposed energy and battle prowess were terrifying beyond compare. Even the mother gold body was beaten until it was about to be pierced through. Boom! This man with a head full of brilliant silver hair threw down several shattered magical treasures, decisively admitted defeat, and quickly fled. Gotcha! In midair, 2 crisp sounds rang out. Chu Feng grabbed 2 of the 9 flying swords with his bare hands and forcibly snapped them apart. The mother gold weapons were forcibly broken by the golden millstone symbols in his palm. Everyone was shocked. The face of the young man full of immortal Tao aura was pale. He nodded towards Chu Feng and felt waves of powerlessness. In the end, he retreated in defeat. The battle ended. No one expected Chu Feng to be so powerful. His battle prowess was simply inconceivable and universally shocking. He single-handedly swept through the four great prides of heaven. Who else? Chu Feng's hair was disheveled. He stepped on the blood of his enemies as he walked out of the ruined battlefield. In the great mist, he was like an unrivaled immortal demon, intimidating everyone. No one from his generation dared to provoke him. In fact, the four great experts he defeated, according to age, could all be considered evolvers from the previous generations. However, even since the ancient times, how many people could compete with him? How many people could compete with him for supremacy? Is there no one else? This heavenly Emperor Tao throne, then I will accept it, Chu Feng said. In an instant the scene became silent. Chapter 1594. Many people cursed silently. He had indeed won, and it was a great victory, clean and efficient. He defeated four peerless young experts, enough to shock all realms and make the younger generation feel powerless. However, were you going to become arrogant just like that? Even though you swept through the Hing generation and were almost unrivaled in the younger generation, and even the older generation couldn't escape the fate of being suppressed, do you think you can obtain the throne with just this? Are you treating us old fellows like we don't exist? An old ultimate expert spoke. He couldn't hold back any longer. This old man is unrivaled in the true immortal realm. Don't you want to discuss it with me and see who wins and loses? Another person spoke. Heh! Li Blackhand appeared, standing on Chu Feng's side. He was quite cold towards the so-called true immortal, even showing a bit of disdain. He looked at the crowd with disdain and said, "You dare say that true immortals are unrivaled? Back then, when I was unrivaled under the heavens, why didn't you jump out?" Then, he said, "In the present world, I indeed can't use the saying that true immortals are invincible. It is because if I gather my rotting corpse and my various obsessions, I might be able to reach another great level of invincibility." Fuck! The group of old monsters rolled their eyes. How could the people from the First Mountains system be so hateful and disliked? Many people cursed silently. First there was Jui, then there was Li Su, and now there was Chu Feng. Not a single one of them was good, and they should all be beaten to death. This old man also believes that our lineage can inherit the throne, Jui said slowly. The immortal kings of the outer realms were all dissatisfied, especially the opposing powers. How could they be forced to shut up with just a few words? That's enough from your line of descent. You all consider everyone beneath you arrogant and lawless. How can you even inherit the throne? The group of old monsters in the two-realm battlefield were competing, the smell of gunpowder thick in the dark. But the outside world wasn't like this. When they found out that Chu Feng had defeated the four young experts, destroyed the immortal execution ground by himself, and suppressed the four Hing generation experts, the outside world was in a complete uproar. Chu Feng's great victory had too great of an impact. When the foreign races learned that their great realm's Tao child, the world's #1 young expert, had been defeated, they were all shaken. To them, this was an unimaginable event. The so-called Heaven's Chosen One, the evolver with the greatest potential, had actually been defeated. Furthermore, he had been defeated in the process of ganging up on his opponent. It was simply inconceivable. Just what is the background of that Chu Mo? He actually has such a frightening cultivation. Isn't it too terrifying? What a freak! How can there be such an evolver? What he's facing is an eternal rank monster. Any one of these monsters can sweep through everything and is invincible within the same realm. They are all monsters destined to be recorded in the annals of history. But now all four of them have appeared, and Chuimo has either killed them or forced them back. This is 2F*, King unreasonable. All of the powerful inheritances and undying families of the various realms were passionately discussing this. Even a few creatures with extremely high statuses and excellent self-cultivation couldn't help but curse. Needless to say, the mortal realm was already boiling over. Demon Chu has become a spirit, a Buddha, an ancestor. This monster is becoming more and more terrifying, more and more unfathomable. He single-handedly defeated 4 eternal-level young experts. Does he want to ascend to the heavens? No, he wants to break through the great boundary wall of the heavens? What a monster! We haven't seen each other for so many years. Who would have thought that the Tao friend who sat and discussed the Tao with me back then would grow to such a level and surpass me? Bah! Don't flatter yourself. He's someone from the lesser nether realm and hasn't been in the mortal realm for many years. He has nothing to do with you. The mortal realm was in an uproar. There were all kinds of voices, and even people had come out to recognize relatives. Do you see that? That's my uncle. We're close relatives that far surpasses the imagination of ordinary people. This kind of kinship claim was initially repulsive, but after some people carefully traced it back, they unexpectedly found that it was actually reliable. This shocked everyone to the ground. This was a group of geniuses born more than 10 years ago. When they were born, their souls were engraved with word. Many of them wrote, "My uncle is Chu Feng." Everyone was speechless. There had been such rumors in the past. At that time, people didn't feel that the background of these words was very strong. But now, some people who were hostile to Chu Feng suddenly felt that if such a large group of geniuses took the initiative to think that they were Chu Feng's juniors, their strength would be somewhat terrifying if they joined forces. The evolvers from the opposing camp had unsightly expressions. They all felt as if they had kissed a black dog. Truly invincible. Chu. Ying Xiaoxiao of the quasi-immortal race shouted happily with her silvery hair like satin. She was even more excited than if Chu Feng had won himself. Beside her, her brother Ying Wudi was really hurt. This little girl was openly provoking him. He really wanted to drag her over and beat her up. Haha, do you see that? This is Demon Chu of the Peerless Twins. Please don't overlook the other person. Please say my real name, Ouyang Great Dragon Demon. The strange dragon laughed arrogantly, but he hadn't reached the peak of his excitement when he was sent flying by old Gu's kick. Extreme joy begets sorrow. He's that strong, so strong that you're panicking. In front of the two-realm battlefield, the lively Zhou she wasn't affected by the explosive smell of the immortal king. Instead, she hummed a song. Rumble. Suddenly, the tranquility was broken. The sky cracked and an ancient door appeared. A creature walked out from it and came to the lower realm. The energy of high heaven poured down. This supreme pure land, the supreme land, unexpectedly opened the door again today, breaking common sense. A green ox appeared, its whole body shining with bright fur. It stepped on the void and slowly walked over step by step. On its back sat an old man, his whole body shrouded in immortal mist and ancestral Taoist substance. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Patriarch Meng had blown up an ancestral Taoist, and now another one had come? High heaven was indeed unfathomable. Just how many pioneers and founders were there like this? It's not an ancestral Taoist. At most, it's a giant immortal king. The reason why we can feel the astonishing density of energy is that those energy particles are pouring down from high heaven. That place is too unusual, some immortal king said secretly. When everyone heard this, they let out a long breath, but they were still a little nervous. Involving high heaven was definitely not a small matter, especially when a creature had personally come down. Looking at its extravagance, it was definitely not from an ordinary orthodoxy. There were a few people following behind the old man. There were old men and strong men. The most eye-catching was still a young man. His eyes were like golden lamps, and there were traces of great Tao runes appearing. It was obvious at a glance that he was not ordinary. This was a middle-aged generation from high heaven. There was no doubt that he was absolutely powerful. "We have no ill intentions. We made an exception to come down to the lower realms. We want to help everyone unify and do our best." The old man on the back of the green ox spoke slowly, his tone calm. This person was unfathomable. He was a giant among immortal kings, an old monster who could sweep away those at the same level. For a moment, although he was as calm as water, he gave people a great sense of oppression. Even the ox he was sitting on was extraordinary. People were shocked to find that even it was at the level of a high-level true immortal. In front of the two-realm battlefield, it immediately quieted down. There were no ordinary people present, so they naturally thought a lot. Now that this kind of person had come down to the lower realms, how could they contribute to the heavens for no reason? Why didn't they come in the past? "We are willing to join hands with the heavens and become a part of you," the old man said again. At the same time, the young man with eyes like golden lamps, after hearing this, revealed an astonishing energy, and swept his eyes over all the young experts present. Everyone instantly understood. Become a part of the crowd, this was saying that they were not external help, but regarded as having the same status as the natives? This couldn't be to compete with the evolvers of the heavens for the celestial emperor position, right? People had a bad association. Sure enough, looking at these people's words and actions, it was extremely likely that this was the case. Boom! The sound of an explosion rang out. There were millions and millions of strands of order runes, and the dazzling runes covered the sky like a vast ocean. Someone else came out of the door. A tall old man sat cross-legged in a golden cloud, rushing out of the door of high heaven. Sitting down, there was a young man covered in lightning, order runes wrapped around his body, and lightning bloomed one after another. He was like the reincarnation of a Thunder Tao immortal king. This was definitely a terrifying freak among the young generation of high heaven. It was the first time the people of the heavens had seen this kind of evolver, and for a moment, he attracted many people's attention. "I heard that the lower realm is fighting for the celestial emperor position, and evolvers of all levels can participate. I'm willing to come and exchange pointers." The young man who was like the reincarnation of a Thunder Tao immortal king said loudly. He was more direct, with a head full of golden hair that seemed to be cast from gold, and his eyes were fierce and unruly as he directly stated his purpose. People who came from high heaven had their own goals, and they all came for their own sake. The experts of the heavens from all realms suddenly felt a wave of anger in their hearts. These people came to pick the peaches, and they came for the celestial emperor position. None of you are creatures of this world, and you are separated from the other realms. Since ancient times, not many creatures of the lower realms could ascend to the top. You all come from the so-called outer world, the orthodoxy that belongs to high heaven, but you want to come here to become celestial emperor. Seeing that the result was about to come, now these people suddenly came, and they absolutely wanted to pick the final fruit. This was a robbery halfway. This group of people is too unscrupulous, their skin is too thick. Even the red-lipped, white-toothed old man couldn't help but say. The young people didn't understand, but the older generation experts all knew the importance of the celestial emperor position. Once they obtained this kind of great position, they could increase their own strength on the original foundation. Especially this time, the celestial emperor position that was recognized by all realms was a great position that was unimaginable in the past. It could possibly increase one's original strength by a great realm. How terrifying and astonishing was this! The immortal kings were all envious, or else why would so many old monsters appear? Of course, no matter how strong one was, it was impossible to truly increase to the celestial emperor level by relying on this kind of great position. There was a ceiling above them. However, it was still possible to approach the Pathfinder and enter the corresponding realm of the Founder. Of course, this was all on the important premise. One was originally already powerful enough in the various realms to look down on all races. This is too much. A very ancient immortal king who had lived for several epochs was very angry at this moment. Obtaining the great position revered by all the heavens and increasing one's strength by a great level, who wouldn't be tempted? I was wondering why the beings at the end of the road in the high heavens would interfere in this great calamity and fight for a chance of survival after the heavens were unified. So it turns out that they were waiting here to create a foundation-level assistant for themselves? This is for the welfare of their own disciples. Some immortal kings snorted coldly, expressing the incomparably strong dissatisfaction in their hearts. The first guest from the high heavens to appear, an old man riding on the back of a green ox, said, "Fellow Taoist, you must be joking. There are billions of universes in the boundless universe, so how can we seal ourselves off? Any brilliant path of evolution requires exchanges and sparring. Pure exclusion will only lead to stagnation in the end, causing the orthodoxy to decline. With us participating in the competition, it is beneficial for all parties." He was very calm and indifferent, as if he was aloof. In the two-realm battlefield, some immortal kings frowned because this old man was really sanctimonious. He spoke in a dignified manner, but wasn't his goal to reap the fruits of his labor? The Dog Emperor shouted, "Do you think we don't have any experts here? I just want to ask, the beings at the end of the road have already set the tone. Is it going to change its mind now, and you want to personally participate?" "Not yet. The supreme beings at the end of the road will not interfere in this kind of matter. Fellow Taoists, don't worry. Existences at the level of celestial emperors will not interfere," said the old man sitting in the golden clouds. The young man beside him, covered in lightning, looked at the crowd with disdain. His eyes swept across the faces of many young people, and he looked very disappointed. Jiudawi said, "If that's the case, I won't burn incense and try to invite that person back." This kind of words was undoubtedly an unimaginably powerful shock, because the pupils of the beings from the high heavens all shrank. Obviously, that person had stirred up endless waves in the high heavens. Even though many eras had passed, those who were qualified to know about it could not erase that terrifying past from their hearts. However, those who truly understood, such as the Dog Emperor, the Rotten Corpse, Li Su, and Chu Feng, all knew that Jiudawi was bluffing, and they had long since cut off all contact with that person. However, the guests from the high heavens were not ordinary people. Soon, they were sure that that person would not appear again. "So, you're very confident, and you're not afraid of being swept away." The old man sitting in the golden clouds was not at all tactful, and could be said to be quite direct and violent, the opposite of the old man sitting on the back of the green bull. Seeing one of them speak in a dignified manner, and the other was quite rude and unreasonable, Jiudawi was very displeased. His anger rose, and he said, "Do you really think we have no one?" The two great powerhouses did not speak, and they maintained their silence, but it also highlighted their arrogance, as well as a kind of silent contempt. "You've come to pick peaches, and yet you still dare to be so overbearing? Even if you have a human head, I'll beat the dog's head out." The Dog Emperor was so angry that he kept howling. The other celestial kings were also angry, and their hearts were full of fire. "Come, old brothers, it's time to gather," Jiudawi roared, summoning the 800 old soldiers who had followed that person in the past. As soon as he finished speaking, a figure appeared on the scene. It could be said that he was lightning fast, and even the people from the high heavens were shocked, and they were very afraid. "All right, I'm here. Play with the cat, walk the dog, and beat the high heavens?" The person who came said casually. This was an old man with a lame leg, a disability left behind by the great Tao. He wore tattered armor, and he was slovenly, but his spirit seemed to be frighteningly good. His face was red, and his eyes contained the sun and moon. There was a faint emperor's chi circulating around his body, and he was hale and hearty. This person's heart was really big, to put beating the high heavens and playing with the cat and walking the dog side by side. It really made people speechless. The dog emperor was so angry that he bared his teeth, and he wanted to pounce and bite this person. A body that has been baptized by the celestial emperor's blood? The old man sitting on the back of the green bull was shocked, and he was incomparably vigilant. We're also here. It really wasn't easy to recover, but the emperor's blood revived us, and we're even stronger. 2 more people arrived, and they were more or less disabled, but their blood chi surged, like the fluctuations of the sea of stars, surging towards the outer realms, and almost shaking down the celestial kings. If we're exchanging pointers, I think we should start with us, the middle and young generation. The golden-haired young man covered in lightning runes said. He felt that the atmosphere was not right. The 3 old monsters who came were extremely powerful and frightening, and he wanted to buy time for the celestial king giants. He wanted to sweep through the younger generation of the lower realm first. Ouyang Delong shook his head and said, "These days, everything is lacking, but there's no shortage of people who take the initiative to send themselves to be beaten. How can they not think things through? How do they want to die? According to my estimation, they'll definitely go up and be hammered to death by Great Pit Demon Chu." After the young man with dense order runes, who was like the reincarnation of a lightning Tao celestial king, heard this, his eyes revealed a cold glint, and he stared at Ouyang Dalong, the lightning all over his body exploding. Chapter 1595. Ouyang Feng Toad spat out a mouthful of saliva. "What are you looking at? Have you never seen such a brilliant dragon before? Look again? Let my sworn brother demon Chu beat your head into a dog's." Bang! He was sent flying and a furry black dog's leg retracted. The dog emperor bared his teeth and glared at him fiercely. Ouyang Delong felt a bit wronged. "Didn't you say the same thing yourself? Why can't I do it?" That young man from high heavens was covered in lightning. His aura was terrifying and thunder rumbled, causing the void to explode and the surroundings to tremble violently. It was a terrifying scene. He flew straight toward Longdew. He raised his palm and tens of thousands of lightning bolts blasted down. A golden fist the size of a mountain flew out from his direction. It was densely packed with runes and radiated with boundless radiance as it came crashing down. This was a secret technique activated by the golden-haired man. The lightning transformed into a fist and arrived like a giant mountain of thunder. It was about to crush Ouyang Feng Toad beneath it. Without a doubt, this was extremely terrifying. It was so fast that the strange dragon couldn't react in time. That was true lightning speed. With so many experts present, they naturally couldn't watch as Ouyang Guilong was killed. Otherwise, where would the face of the heavens be? It would be too shameful. Chu Feng moved later but arrived first. Great Tao runes flickered beneath his feet as if he was stepping on the river of time. He moved later but arrived first. His hand rapidly enlarged and grabbed that mountain-sized golden lightning fist mark. Then, he squeezed it forcefully. With a hong sound, countless lightning Tao symbols collapsed between heaven and earth. It was deafening, and even the world seemed to be shaken. Chaotic energy spread out. However, this lightning fist seal was broken in the end. It was crushed by Chu Feng's squeeze. The giant golden fist collapsed and disappeared completely. Not only did this person from high heavens want to pluck the peaches and snatch the celestial emperor's position, but he also wanted to kill evolvers at will. This was too tyrannical and made everyone furious. Even though he didn't succeed? But this young man with golden hair that seemed to be cast from gold had provoked the public's anger? Many people were hostile toward him. Who would have thought? This golden-haired young man was far more tyrannical than they had imagined. Unruly and fierce, he pointed at Chu Feng and said, "You? Not bad. Come, fight me." The whole place suddenly fell silent. Even the immortal king didn't say anything. As for the younger generation, they revealed strange expressions. No one knew better than them how terrifying Demon Chu was. Not long ago, this lord had single-handedly suppressed 4 heaven-bestowed beings of the Heng generation, although the monsters of the younger generation in high heavens were very strong. But it couldn't be too ridiculous. People had a feeling that the demon lord Chu Feng was most likely not weaker than the heavens chosen of high heavens, and some people were extremely confident in him. As for Ancient Gu and the strange dragon, there was no need to mention them. He firmly believed that Chu Feng could beat the golden-haired man to the point that he would vomit blood in the shortest time possible. Sure enough, Chu Feng didn't let them down. He beckoned with his finger and said, "You, crawl over here. But you can't do it alone. Let's have all the young and middle-aged people from the heavens come together." This immediately aroused the anger of the crowd. The golden-haired man's eyes were deep, and in an instant, his cold aura was terrifying. But he hadn't even opened his mouth when someone coldly admonished him from behind. "You're still too young. No matter how strong you are, you have to be humble." The last evolver who dared to speak like this to someone from the lightning ancestor's lineage was already reincarnated 14 times. Chu Feng taunted, "You guys haven't shown yourselves for so many eras, but for the sake of the Celestial Emperor's position, you don't care about your face at all. You've rushed to the heavens to fight with us for the throne. What face do you still care about? Don't try to intimidate me. I hate creatures like you the most." Boom. Violent energy waves spread out as divinity granules poured down and ancestral Taoist matter filled the air. Once again, an expert appeared at the high heavens door and came down to the lower realm. It was a dignified and elegant middle-aged woman. At least that was how she looked, but one could imagine that she was actually very old. She was an evolver from high heavens who had cultivated for who knew how many tens of thousands of years. She sat cross-legged on the back of a white lion, and a group of women followed behind her. Their temperaments were outstanding, as though a group of fairies had descended to the world. The arrival of this group of people immediately created a huge pressure on the cultivators of the heavens. Just how many people from high heavens had come? "Are there more?" the Dog Emperor shouted. "That's enough. It's just our fellow cultivators from the 3 sects. The old man sitting on the golden cloud replied. "Of course, if you feel that there aren't enough experts and that sparring is meaningless, we can still call for more fellow cultivators to come down to the lower realm," the old man sitting on the back of the green ox said with a faint smile. Jiudao Yi snorted coldly. This was really looking down on them. However, he had 3 old brothers who had all been baptized by the Celestial Emperor's blood. In theory, they didn't fear any celestial king. At the same time, Jiudao Yi couldn't help but look up to the sky and sigh again. "O souls, O flesh and blood, O true bones, where are you all floating? Come back!" Rumble. Inside the high heavens door, a war chariot rumbled as if it was coming from afar. Could it be that someone really wanted to go down to the lower realm? This caused everyone's expression to change. Oh, there are indeed some fellow cultivators who want to come down, but judging from the situation, it might not be necessary, the old man sitting on the green ox added. For a moment, all the celestial kings in the heavens had ugly expressions. "Look, what kind of people are in the lower realm? That old black dog whose fur is about to fall off, and that person beside him whose flesh is about to rot. Is that a rotten corpse? Sure enough, it's a filthy land." In the sky, the young man from the high heavens secretly transmitted his voice. However, their cultivation was not enough to block the perception of the celestial kings, so the Dog Emperor and the rotten corpse clearly heard it. It was unknown whether it was a provocation, but even the 3 cultivators from the high heavens who led the troops to the lower realm smiled slightly and commented indifferently. "This is intolerable." The Dog Emperor was instantly enraged. The rotten corpse was also agitated. He decided to try and summon his main soul as well as his other subsouls. He was in a special state. His soul light was separated, and his main soul was suspected to have escaped to the underworld. Some of his subsouls had reincarnated, but no one knew where they were. Come to think of it, I'm also the sole favorite of heaven and earth, the supreme genius of the universe. Since when did it become your turn to criticize me? I guarantee I'll beat the crap out of all of you in a while. The rotten corpse spoke ruthlessly. Moreover, it was undisguised boorish and unrestrained. He was truly enraged. He asked the Dog Emperor to help him set up some kind of large-scale domain, and he actually wanted to summon his soul on the spot. He himself was also a great expert in this field. With the Dog Emperor's help, he very quickly carved out an extremely complicated large-scale soul-summoning domain. Immediately, the whole world became dark. Following that, a black whirlwind swept up and a rain of blood poured down. The scene between heaven and earth was extremely terrifying. The surrounding large area was filled with the wailing of ghosts and the howling of gods, and all kinds of supernatural phenomena appeared at the same time. Everyone was speechless, and they felt apprehensive. How could this master summon his own soul light back be so terrifying? It wasn't holy at all. Was he calling for a soul to call for a ghost, or was he looking for his own soul? A miserable cry came from afar, and everyone's scalps went numb upon hearing it. They quickly approached this place. In the rain of blood, under the pitch-black lightning, and amidst the black whirlwind, something was coming. The miserable cry became more and more mournful, and in the end it even turned into a wail. Bang! In the black whirlwind, a heavy object fell to the ground, and for a moment, it attracted everyone's attention. It was actually a big fat boy. To be precise, it should be a fat youth. He was chubby, fair, and clean. He looked to be in his teens, and his eyes were filled with horror. He was obviously scared stiff just now. The rain of blood stopped, and so did the black lightning. There was no more flying sand and stones in the surroundings, nor were there the wailing of ghosts and the howling of gods. Peace was restored. Damn! The rotten corpse immediately exploded in anger. What kind of situation was this? He summoned a soul, and in the end, a big fat youth came? Don't tell me you're the one reincarnated from my soul fragment? The rotten corpse's expression immediately became a bit unsightly. Why was this kid so fair and fat? He was only in his teens, so what use could he be? But it had to be said that he himself was also very fat back then. This was indeed a bit of fate. Ghost! Old monster, you dare to detain me? Do you know that I am a celestial lord? The young fatso shouted, and he staggered backwards. Suddenly, he saw Chu Feng, and his eyes immediately widened. He couldn't help but blurt out, "Father? You let me off easy." Upon hearing this, the rotten corpse's face immediately turned green. Your grandpa, who are you? Who are you calling father? Why?" The others were also stunned. What kind of situation was this? What kind of grudge was there? The first thing Chu Feng did was to open his eyes wide. Then, he rushed over with large strides and lifted this fat youth up. He was a bit emotional and a bit sad as he said, "It's really you. Little Taoist, my child." This word, child, shocked the surrounding people so much that their jaws almost fell to the ground. The rotten corpse's body swayed, and his vision darkened. He almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. He had suffered serious internal injuries, and he almost suffocated to death. Who am I? Where am I? Where am I going? The rotten corpse was as if he were talking in a dream, and he was completely dumbfounded. Father, we haven't seen each other for many years. I didn't expect you to come here too. The fat youth's expression was complicated. What did you call him? Is he even related to you? The rotten corpse was flustered and exasperated. He couldn't take it anymore. He was already convinced that this was the reincarnation of his split soul. In the end, the fat youth found him a father, and a familiar one at that. It was that detestable little devil Chu Feng. Sigh, this is my father, a relative from my past life in the lesser underworld, the fat youth explained. Now that he had come into contact with the rotten corpse, some of his old memories began to gradually come back. The rotten corpse was choking with anger. It was as if one Buddha had come into the world, and 2 Buddhas had ascended to heaven. Even his 7 apertures were spewing white smoke. He couldn't bear it. The surrounding people were also dumbfounded, and the dog emperor was even more dumbfounded. Then, without a conscience, it covered its mouth with its large paw and laughed soundlessly. It was about to burst its belly from laughing. Father and son meet again. How touching! 9 Dowie was also there, shaking its head. Touching my ass! White smoke rose from the top of the rotten corpse's head. He was so angry that his hair was about to be set on fire. Ha ha, woof, not bad. Damned fatso, stinky Taoist, you finally have a relative in your old age. You won't be lonely from now on. It's not easy. The dog emperor gloated. At this time, the clouds in the sky parted, and the rain of blood dispersed. However, at this critical moment, another living being fell with a plop. Moreover, after this living being fell, it was incomparably excited and affectionate when it saw Chu Feng. It immediately rushed over and hugged one of his thighs. Seeing this, the rotten corpse was about to go crazy. His eyes were burning. Could it be that another split soul had come? Another one went to find a father? He really wanted to kill someone. Chapter 1596. This was a small beast, and its true form was a qilin. Its large eyes were bright and sparkling like crystals. Its snow-white scales seemed to be carved out of fine jade, and its small horns were forked like a dragon's. Chu Feng's attention was immediately attracted, and he couldn't shift his gaze away. Then, he subconsciously threw away the fat boy that was in midair with a plop and picked up the little qilin. Is it the real son? Someone was seriously suspicious. It was none other than the son Chu Feng had unconsciously thrown to the side, the young fatso. He was quite dissatisfied. The others were also confused. Chu Feng had thrown away his son and picked up the little qilin. Just what was its background? The decayed corpse had mixed feelings and found it difficult to understand what he was feeling. This was a torment. Today, he felt that life was incomparably gloomy. Moreover, Chow Dan, yellow cattle? It's you, isn't it? Chu Feng whispered excitedly. After so many years, he had finally seen this little fellow. It had actually reincarnated into a white qilin. Now, he couldn't think about whether the truth of reincarnation was cruel or whether it was real. He could only believe in reincarnation. After all, he had seen his son and the yellow cattle that he couldn't forget. The reason he could walk the path of evolution was mainly because of the yellow cattle. Even the first part of the robbery induction breathing technique was obtained from the yellow cattle. It could be considered his guide. Chu Feng, I'm all right. I haven't suffered for so many years, and I've obtained the highest bloodline of the qilin race after reincarnation. The yellow cattle's voice was very tender, giving people a soft and weak feeling. Its large eyes were blinking and its body wasn't big. It looked quite adorable. That's good. We'll talk about it in a bit. Chu Feng rubbed its head. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and pulled up the chubby boy beside him. This made Duan Dao feel hurt, but at the same time, he reluctantly accepted the current situation. That's right, this little Taoist's surname was Duan? He took the liberty of giving himself a strange name and was almost beaten to death by his father in this life when he was young. His parents were mortals, so normal people didn't like this name. In the end, he threw a tantrum and refused to change it. At this time, Zhou Shi's expression was strange. She sighed faintly. Her mood was very complicated. After so many years, even Chu Feng's child had grown up. Duan Dao was very smart. She was also very quick-witted. She moved closer with a straight face. He called out courageously, "Second mother." Young Fatso was stunned. Zhou Shi? This caused her face to turn red in an instant. My father is shy, but I, Duan Dao, am direct. What's there to be shy about? We are all family. Sigh, I understand now. My biological mother has changed? Don't like my dad anymore. Could it be called an ill-fated relationship? You abandoned him. Duan Dao actually dared to say such words in such a serious situation. She was usually mischievous? But now her face was red? He was put on the spot by this little Taoist, and didn't know what to say. Chu Feng also wanted to hammer him to death. What abandonment! What ill-fated relationship! Was this something a son should talk about? And in front of the all-heavens experts. Even someone as thick-skinned as Chu Feng couldn't stand it. The matter wasn't over yet. Duan Dao's chubby face was full of smiles. He looked at the exceptionally elegant and otherworldly Yao Yao and shouted, "Auntie!" First it was the second mother, then the auntie. This damned young fatso just shouted it out like that. Yao Yao didn't say anything. The space between her eyebrows shone. Although she didn't make a move, the little Taoist was still sent flying and almost crashed into the group of evolvers from high heavens. The chubby young man wasn't anxious yet, but the decayed corpse felt heartache and shouted, "Slow down! Don't hit me! This is actually me. You really don't leave this poor Taoist any face." Chu Feng, he was really in a mess. Such a complicated relationship and such a tangled past made him somewhat unable to bear it. Sister-in-law. Even the yellow cattle had begun to add to the chaos. Its weak greeting was actually directed at Zhou Shi and Yao Yao at the same time. Chu Feng picked it up and hurriedly changed the topic. "How did you get here? I met Duan Dao recently and we've been together all this time. Today, there was a whirlwind of black fur and a rain of blood. In the end, there was even some kind of power that captured him and took him away. I was forced to follow him here." Yellow Ox blinked his big eyes innocently. "Little Yellow Cattle, I haven't seen you for many years. You've become quite naughty." Yao Yao didn't plan on letting it go. She gently waved her hand and restrained it. Then she rubbed it with all her might, practically squeezing it into a Qilin ball. Bang! Then, it was thrown out and smashed into Duan Dao's body. "Everyone, it's about time to catch up. When will we exchange pointers?" "This old man is looking forward to it," said the old man sitting on the back of the green cattle. They didn't want to stay in the lower realms for too long and wanted to use the Celestial Emperor's position to improve themselves as soon as possible. From their point of view, the lower realms were really filthy and couldn't be compared to high heavens. Not to mention the ancestral matter, even the divinity granules weren't rich enough. In the sky, the celestial kings from all the heavens had unsightly expressions. In particular, the celestial kings wanted to take the most difficult step that involved life and death. Who could endure it? Who would be willing to let others interfere and seize the fruits of the great Tao that they coveted? The sooner we fight, the sooner we can end it. "I feel like my stainless body is being eroded here," a young woman whispered behind the middle-aged woman sitting cross-legged on the back of the white lion. Although she said it in private and secretly transmitted her voice, it was naturally intercepted and sensed by the powerhouses of the heavens. "How hateful! You came to seize the throne but picked the fruits halfway and even despised our world. Then get lost, don't come." A veteran powerhouse with a fiery temper berated loudly. "There's nothing to say. They've already taken advantage of us and are clearly trying to rob us. What else is there to say?" "Fight," said a giant celestial king coldly. On the side of the heavens, figures constantly flickered out. Some ancient existences had awakened and rushed to this battlefield. Since someone interfered and came to the heavens to take advantage of us, there's no need to be polite. If they don't retreat, kill them all. Jiudao said fiercely. Others might not dare to say this, but he had nothing to worry about. He had once followed that person and had seen all kinds of great scenes. So what if it's the heavens? It's not like I haven't killed the powerhouses up there before. I've even roasted and eaten them. Behind Jiudao, His old brother was even more fearless. His tone was quite bold and unrestrained as he looked down on the evolvers from the heavens. Come, who wants to fight with me? Behind Jiudao, an old soldier with a ruddy face but missing a leg shouted. The tattered armor on his body clanked and the blood energy in his body surged. It made everyone on the other side shiver as they felt the Emperor Qi again. We can't wait any longer. We've come to the lower realms. In the end, there were beings in the heavens who couldn't hold back and didn't abide by the agreement. Another group of people descended, and this time there were quite a few, more than 100 powerhouses. These were all evolvers who wanted a share of the spoils. They came from different orthodoxies, and there was no lack of peerless immortal kings among them. Come, fatty, come over here. Otherwise, I'll have called you back for nothing. Return to one. The decayed corpse shouted. He wanted to increase his strength and participate in the battle. Young Fatso's expression changed and became somewhat pale. He naturally had some kind of bad association. Was he going to be devoured? Father, dear father, save me. He hugged Chu Feng's thigh and no longer said the words, I've taken advantage of you. When the decayed corpse heard this, his eyes went round. He was so angry that he was choking. His heart was aching, and his kidneys were even more so. That was because the young Fatso could also be considered a part of him. As expected, Chu Feng went up and directly stopped the decayed corpse. He was also afraid that there would be problems. Get out of my way. The decayed corpse was resentful. However, he still explained, not for Chu Feng, but for the young Taoist. The main reason was that he was afraid that the young Taoist wouldn't cooperate. You and I have temporarily merged into one. Afterwards, we will still separate. You white fatso, you still dare to look down on me? Duan Dao screamed miserably, but in the end, he still merged with the decayed corpse, becoming one. He immediately became the fat Taoist. I really can't stand it. Were you still wetting the bed 2 years ago? The fat Taoist's face darkened. However, soon after, his expression changed again. He had a lively and curious expression as he said, I'm just curious. Why does this old fella have so many terrifying fetishes? For example, he often digs up other people's ancestral graves. Whichever family's ancestor produced an exceptional expert, he will visit them all in the end. It was clear that this fat Taoist continuously switched roles. One moment, he was the old Taoist, and the next, he was Duan Dao. This old fella actually liked a young lady called Little Rabbit. What era is this? How many eras has it been, yet he is still so useless. He still can't forget her. There was actually such a soft place in his heart that he hasn't let go even now. He is still looking for her? Duan Dao muttered. The decayed corpse's face turned green. He didn't want to say such words, but his separated soul had just temporarily merged into one with him. He was simply too ashamed to show his face. Shut up. You're not allowed to say it. Duan Dao was incomparably puzzled as he said, What kind of obsession is this? You were bitten by a dog before, yet you actually want to bite it back? Beside him, the dog emperor was instantly enraged when he heard this. He used his bald tail to protect his buttocks. His old face was pitch black and gloomy as he questioned the decayed corpse if he really wanted to bite him. Kill! The decayed corpse couldn't stand it anymore. He immediately rushed out and quickly completed the fusion. His body and soul had become one, and his strength had indeed increased by a large margin. After the young Fatso's soul light returned, it made the Celestial King's soul light more substantial and complete. At the same time, it also gave the Overlook a body full of vitality and blood, causing his combat power to soar in a short period of time. Boom! The decayed corpse directly attacked the old man sitting on the back of the green ox. His wonderful technique soared into the sky, and order covered the entire sky like a spider web. Come, all of you, come over here. An old soldier behind Jiudaoi also walked forward, holding a large halberd in his hand. With a boom, the sky was split into two, and he went up to attack the supreme celestial king. Whoosh whoosh! The other two old soldiers also moved. In addition, there were other celestial kings on the side of the heavens. For example, the thin and withered old man who had revived from the famed mountains and created the scripture of time. At this time, he had already controlled the river of time and swept through the vast world. Boom! Something terrifying happened. In the battle beyond the heavens, Jiudaoi's old brother, the legless old soldier, was too fierce. After going up against the big shots of the high heavens, he didn't dodge or evade and directly collided with them. In fact, he didn't even try to defend himself. He was completely fighting with a method of mutual destruction. The supreme celestial king of the high heavens was also a ruthless character. He didn't retreat or evade, and directly used a method of mutual destruction to fight head-on with him. Then, tragedy struck him. His body was directly blown up by the legless old soldier. Even his spirit exploded, scattering into dozens of parts, and rushing in all directions. There was no need to talk about the physical body. Blood splashed everywhere, and the celestial king's bones were broken and scattered everywhere. However, the old soldier's body was actually unharmed. At that crucial moment, a mysterious blood energy appeared in his body, protecting his body from being destroyed. Don't fight him head-on. He has definitely been baptized by the celestial emperor's blood. Someone shouted in warning from behind. Haha, I haven't exercised my muscles in so many years. How satisfying! The legless old soldier laughed loudly. Pfft! In the distance, another old soldier held a large halberd and actually cut off a celestial king's arm. King's blood splashed everywhere, piercing through the void and dyeing the heavens red. After sleeping for so many years, we have returned. The old soldier held the large halberd and roared. Who dares to fight against me? You come over! The golden-haired man covered in lightning runes, and even his pores were releasing beams of lightning. He looked disdainfully at the heavens, and in the end, he even pointed at Chu Feng. As expected, Chu Feng entered the battlefield. Moreover, he repeatedly gestured with his hands, wanting to beat up a group of young geniuses of the high heavens and sweep through them all by himself. I've seen unreasonable people, but I've never seen someone this unreasonable. It's fine if the natives of the lower realms dare to contend for hegemony with us, but he's still so arrogant, delusional enough to face all of us by himself. Someone immediately became angry. Unfortunately, he had just shouted out in anger. In the next moment, a huge fist imprint blasted over. Groups of stars revolved around it, and that fist imprint was like a great sun crossing the sky. It was too resplendent. Bang! This person exploded without any suspense. Moreover, even his soul light was scattered by Chu Feng's fist imprint, unable to reassemble. Chu Feng exploded a young expert of the high heavens with just a single punch. He's not even at the eternal level. He's just a great heavenly venerable. What is a great heavenly venerable acting all high and mighty for? Chu Feng was disdainful. The expressions of the group of young people all changed. Even in the high heavens, the great heavens weren't easy to deal with. They were also considered outstanding talents among the younger generation, yet they were actually looked down upon in the lower realms? In reality, this was indeed the case just now. That person was smashed into nothingness by a single punch from Chu Feng. Boom! Chu Feng charged toward the golden-haired man covered in lightning. His aura could devour mountains and rivers, and a large half of the lightning that filled the sky collapsed with their first clash. Obviously, this golden-haired man was also an eternal-level entity, a young monster belonging to the high heavens. However, he was still a bit weaker than Chu Feng. This won't do. It's not enough. All of you, come at me together, shouted Chu Feng. Whoosh whoosh. This time, no one made a sound. The man with eyes that were like golden lamps, who first appeared with the old man sitting on the back of the green ox, entered the battlefield. As expected, this was an eternal level entity. His strength was extremely powerful, and his eyes reflected the void. The runes in his eyes could even tear heaven and earth apart. His gaze could kill, and it actually shot out materialized rune beams like immortal swords. It was terrifying beyond compare. Chu Feng snorted coldly. His super fiery eyes also erupted with immortal light. Amidst clanging sounds, the two people's gazes collided, and the void was actually crushed. Immortal chi drifted about. On the other side, behind the peerless immortal king-level woman riding on the white lion, a young fairy walked out. She was also an eternal level entity, and she attacked Chu Feng. 3 eternal level entities entered the battlefield to fight a decisive battle against Chu Feng. However, Chu Feng was still roaring, "Not enough? Is there anyone else? All of you, come at me together. Too arrogant, let's suppress him together. No matter what, he's too arrogant. Everyone, let's join forces and subdue this demon together." In the back, a group of young people shouted. They were also infuriated. This was the lower realm that they looked down on, yet there was actually a native that was so tyrannical and insolent, declaring that he would wipe them all out by himself. What they couldn't accept the most was that this native was incomparably powerful. Even the 3 eternal level young experts couldn't take him down together. Rumble! Lightning flashed and thunder roared. Immortal chi filled the air and primal chaos suddenly appeared. A group of youngsters, with the 3 eternal level experts as the main force and the eternal level as support, surrounded and attacked Chu Feng. The battle was incomparably intense. However, they discovered to their shock that they still couldn't take down Chu Feng. Just based on your delusions of seizing the Celestial Emperor's position. If I become an emperor, you guys won't even be kings. Chu Feng roared. His blood energy rushed into the heavens, stirring up the entire world. At this time, his hair was disheveled. He was like a matchless great demon king as he fought head-on against the eternal level entities, taking the initiative to attack. With a boom, he caught up to an expert of the eternal level and blasted him apart with a single fist. Chi. Golden symbols flickered in his eyes. 2 beams of light flew out, piercing through the space between the brows of another young expert from high heavens. He died on the spot. Kill. Chu Feng let out a low roar. A wheel of light appeared behind him. It was the wonderful 7 treasures technique that contained 5 kinds of rare materials. Not only that, but he also carved the golden symbols that had appeared on the stone jar onto the wheel of light. At this moment, the wheel of light spread out and covered his body, making him impervious to all methods. As for himself, he brandished his ultimate fist and operated the robbery induction breathing technique to attack in all directions. Bang! In the battlefield, several figures were blasted apart by Chu Feng in almost an instant. His hair was disheveled as he chased after a group of young experts. Even the golden-haired man covered in lightning couldn't withstand it. He was blasted away by Chu Feng's ultimate fist, coughing up large mouthfuls of blood. As for his lightning, it was all crushed and destroyed by the wheel of light. He couldn't get close to Chu Feng at all. Chi. The wheel of light behind Chu Feng rotated and flew out at extreme speed like a wheel of swords. It cut off the shoulder of the young man with eyes like golden lamps. He let out a blood-curdling scream as half of his body flew away at high speed. Boom! Chu Feng's large hand was like the firmament. It covered down and filled the vast sky. He captured the young woman of the Heng generation with an outstanding temperament and was like a fairy, and he used her as a stool to sit on. His blood and chi surged into the sky. His hair was disheveled as he shouted, "Who else is there? Come at me together. I'll beat everyone in this generation of high heavens by myself." Chapter 1597. Is there no one left? There's not enough. Chu Feng's long hair hung loosely behind him. The blood in his body roiled like thunder, and his blood chi soared like a true dragon, tearing apart the sky. The ground around him was covered in the blood of his enemies. All the participating dark-grade experts had been blown up by him, and there was no one else nearby. He swept his gaze over the evolvers in the distance, causing the young generation of high heavens to feel their hearts palpitate and even their bodies to tremble. At this time, Chu Feng was sitting on the back of the Heng-grade female prodigy, truly treating her like a stool. He looked disdainfully in all directions, and no one dared to look him in the eye. In the eyes of the young generation of high heavens, Chu Feng was like a peerless demon king. The aura he exuded was suffocating and incomparable pressure. The golden-haired man covered in lightning runes was coughing up large mouthfuls of blood in the distance. The wounds on his body healed and split open again, and again and again. He had just suffered from Chu Feng's ultimate punch, and the remnant energy runes were battering his body from time to time. It was difficult to erase, and his body would break open from time to time. On the other side, the young man with eyes like golden lamps was in an even more miserable state. His shoulder had been severed, and the lower half of his body had fallen to the ground. Only his shoulder and abdomen were preserved, and he floated in the air with blood dripping down. The two of them were rich in combat experience and astonishingly fast. After their defeat, they immediately fled the battlefield and stood not far from the immortal king of high heavens. Otherwise, they would have been in danger. According to Chu Feng's personality, if it weren't for the immortal king's aura enveloping the two, he would have chased after them and suppressed them. The one who suffered the most and was the angriest was naturally the fairy who was being used as a stool by Chu Feng. She couldn't escape even if she wanted to and was confined to the ground. At this time, her elegant face had long since turned crimson from shame and indignation. Unfortunately, she had lost the ability to move and was immobilized by the five-colored wheel of light behind Chu Feng. Chu Feng sat there with disheveled hair and sharp eyes. He shouted again, "Is there no one else in high heavens? Aren't you here to pluck the peaches and seize the Tao throne? Is there no one who can stand up to me?" He held a thick long blade in his hand. The snow-white tip of the blade was stabbed into the ground, and his aura was oppressive. He wanted to challenge all the heaven-warping creatures of the high heavens alone. Someone couldn't take it any longer and said, "Don't be so insolent. The heavens are vast and boundless. Even our sex find it hard to explore its limits. There are countless experts there, and there are even some creatures at the end of the path that have dominated the past and present. How could it be something you filthy lower realm creatures can talk about?" Even though they had just lost, there was no way the younger generation of the high heavens would lower their heads. The group of people all revealed looks of discontent, just feeling that this lower realm native was too arrogant. However, they couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. This being from the lower realms was indeed too powerful. Even if he was placed in the high heavens, he would probably be a heaven-blessed being. Some people even gave Chu Feng a higher evaluation, believing that he might be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with a Taoist of an evolutionary civilization. This was incredible. This wasn't the inheritor of an inheritance, but rather the inheritor of an entire evolutionary civilization. All of them were creatures destined to dominate the world. Objectively speaking, he can enter the top 50 of the high heavens young generation potential ranking, perhaps even a bit higher. Someone said softly. Even though they weren't willing to accept it, they still had to admit it. "I don't believe it. Don't you all know what kind of background the top 50 creatures have? Some are clearly great figures from the ancient great eras reincarnated. How can a lower realm native compare to them? Indeed, there's even less of a need to think about those in the top 50. It's hard to even look at their backs. They are all monsters among the most powerful monsters. Apart from a few normal young creatures, there are some who are clearly Tao ancestors reincarnated, to the extent where there are even shadows of existences at the end of the path. The young generation of the high heavens were unconvinced. They spoke softly and conversed, but they also revealed a series of terrifying truths. When the evolvers of all races heard this, their expressions changed. The waters of the high heavens were too deep. Even Tao ancestor-level creatures had fallen, mysteriously suppressed in their past lives, only able to revive and reincarnate with great difficulty? Chu Feng said, "What's the point of saying so much? Let a few of your so-called monsters among monsters come. I feel like I can fight 10 of them alone, I can fight 100 of them." Such ostentatious words, as well as his posture of sitting while leaning on his blade, truly made the group of people shocked and furious. "Native, you are too arrogant!" Someone couldn't help but shout out. When Chu Feng heard this, his eyes immediately shot out a dazzling beam of light. There were symbols that tore through the void, as if an immortal sword was unsheathed. King Chang's sounds rang out. The youngster who berated him as a native immediately cried out and fell on his back. Blood gushed out from the space between his brows. His soul had been killed. Everyone was greatly alarmed and sucked in a breath of cold air. Every single one of them felt a sense of fear. They were separated by such a great distance, yet that Chu Feng relied on his gaze to kill one of them. In that instant, it was as if an immortal sword tore through the air and directly took the enemy's life. After obtaining this kind of result, Chu Feng was extremely calm and didn't treat it as anything important. It was because in his eyes, this kind of person couldn't be considered an opponent at all. He mentioned the others and said, "For example, the so-called Hung level, which can be considered your high heavens' so-called heavenly geniuses, is nothing more than this. There are those who are coughing out blood and those whose bodies are broken apart. Oh, there's also a captive." He pointed out the state of 3 people in succession. This made the group of people resentful, but they couldn't do anything. The golden-haired male whose body was densely covered in lightning symbols spat out one last mouthful of blood. He finally stabilized his injuries, and his flesh no longer cracked apart. However, his complexion was a bit pale. The young male whose eyes were like golden lamps and full of great Tao symbols used a stalk of great medicine from the heavens to repair his body. What a damaged body! The one in the most awkward situation was naturally that woman. She wanted to go crazy, but she couldn't budge an inch. She was imprisoned there and turned into a stool. Under everyone's watchful eyes, who could endure this? This was especially true when she was normally revered as a heavenly fairy, yet in the end she actually ended up like this. It left her ashamed and resentful. "Release Fairy Zhao Lin," someone roared angrily. In reality, at this moment, everyone was somewhat doubting themselves. Why had they overlooked this matter? Fairy Zhao Lin was still sitting under that person. It's that light wheel. It seems to be able to cut through perception and divine sense, causing us to ignore everything. Our vision, divine sense, touch, and physical senses all seem to be blocked. Someone sucked in a breath of cold air. After hearing what he said, everyone felt their blood run cold. Only now did they realize that it was actually true. Some creatures at the end of the road could easily make the world forget about them. But this Chu Feng, what method had he used just now? Chu Feng had indeed fallen into some kind of special state. This time, he had used the wonderful 7 treasures technique to transform it into a 5-colored light wheel. He had also carved the golden characters on the stone jar on it. He had actually comprehended the essence of the technique in the midst of battle. He had thoroughly comprehended it. The essence of the wonderful 7 treasures technique doesn't need to rigidly adhere to the 7 rare and precious substances as the foundation. Every substance can actually be replaced by a path of evolution and civilization. That way, it will be even stronger. Not only did he comprehend the foundation, but he had also undergone some kind of sublimation. Whether or not he could do it was unknown, but this kind of thorough comprehension was instantly interacted with the source of heaven and earth. Therefore, the 5-colored light wheel flourished and covered everything. It had the power of a thoughtless and thoughtless state. "Release Zhao Lin," shouted a woman lightly. She stood up and raised her hand. Order pierced through the vast sky like a rainbow and chopped toward Chu Feng like a flying beam of light. She and Zhao Lin came from the same orthodoxy. They were both disciples of the middle-aged woman riding on the back of the white lion, and this woman had already gazed into the realm of true immortals. She and Zhao Lin were known as the sex twin prides, but her realm was higher than Zhao Lin's. Naturally, their combat power couldn't be compared. Bang! At the crucial moment, Yao Yao made her move. Her slender white hand slapped out gracefully. Her pure white palm looked beautiful and dazzling, but its power was so terrifying. That flying beam of light was immediately scattered. At the same time, Yao Yao came down and blocked the woman. Chi chi chi. Divine rainbows blossomed one after the other. Divine chains of order interweaved like a river of stars and covered the entire battlefield. A large expanse of flying light sprinkled down. It was extremely dazzling. The two women were peerless existences of their respective orthodoxies. They met and fought fiercely. Good, suppress the provocateurs of the lower realms. Show them what we're made of and let them understand that the gap between us and high heavens is like a natural moat. Fairy Chi Yu has never met her match since her debut. The evolvers of the younger generation of high heavens growled in a low voice from behind. The main reason was that Chu Feng's imposing manner was too strong just now. It suppressed the group of people so much that they couldn't raise their head. Now that Chi Yu, the heavens chosen one of the later generations of an evolutionary civilization, had entered the battlefield, their morale was greatly boosted. They felt that they should be able to vent their resentment, so they started to clamor. However, what they didn't expect was that Fairy Chi Yu, who was blooming with immortal light of ascension, was actually sent flying in the fierce confrontation. Yao Yao's palm almost pierced through her body. Her spirit was seriously injured, and she almost lost her life. Behind her, a true immortal came down and caught her. The middle-aged woman sitting on the white lion was a peerless immortal king. She also looked at Yao Yao in astonishment. Even she didn't expect that the other party's methods would be so heaven-defying. Her combat talent was too strong. It hadn't been many moves, but she had actually almost killed the disciple she favored the most. This kind of person was rare even in high heavens, let alone the lower realms. Even some old monsters who had lived for several epochs would fight to take her in as a disciple. Bang! Violent energy fluctuations came from the endless outer realms. Blood-colored halos dyed the skies red. Had an immortal king been thoroughly killed? Where is she? She's too weak. Where did she go? Another one. The one who shouted was the old brother of the 9 Daos, the lame old soldier. After several collisions, he finally used the secret technique of the Emperor's fist and punched her into nothingness. F***ck. Even the evolvers of high heavens couldn't help but want to curse. This person was too ruthless. He had punched a powerful immortal king into nothingness. Was he fighting her to the point where her body and soul were completely destroyed? What kind of secret technique was that? Wasn't it said that it was very difficult for immortal kings to kill each other? Moreover, this lame old fellow was actually looking for someone and searching everywhere. How shameful and terrifying! In reality, the other two old soldiers weren't careless either. The old soldier carrying a large halberd in his hand had the blood of an immortal king flowing on its snow-white blade. We can't move her. This kind of monster has been baptized by Emperor blood and has even learned an immortal Emperor-level secret technique. Someone said with a trembling voice. It wasn't that they couldn't do it, but these 3 old soldiers were really too strange. Emperor Qi was dormant in their bodies, and ordinary immortal kings couldn't move them at all. This poor Taoist is invincible, the decayed corpse shouted as he fought fiercely with his opponent. In short, his soul light wasn't complete. Even though the little Taoist had returned and replenished a part of it, he was still somewhat lacking because the most powerful main soul wasn't here. Therefore, he was fighting with some difficulty, but he actually didn't fall into a disadvantageous position. The battle with the immortal kings of the high heavens had reached a climax. This poor Taoist seriously suspects that if my main soul is here, will I be able to kill Tao ancestor Tsang? The decayed corpse bolstered his courage and encouraged himself. This made many people's faces twitch incessantly. This person was too daring. The 3 old soldiers went to look for opponents again. They wanted to fight to the death with someone. However, even though the second batch of people from the high heavens had more than 100 experts, there weren't many people who were willing to face the 3 of them. Apart from this, there were also other immortal kings from the heavens who entered the battlefield and started a great battle with the experts from the high heavens. Terrifying energy runes erupted in the depths of the outer realms one after another and shook the rules of the great Tao. Come, who will fight with me? A true immortal from the high heavens entered the battlefield. His aura was exceptionally terrifying as he stared at the group of ultimate experts from the heavens who had walked to the end of the path. I'll go. The Feather Emperor entered the battlefield and wanted to fight with him. After that, other true immortals from the high heavens entered the battlefield and wanted to overturn the evolvers of the same realm from the heavens. It really is lively. I also came to the lower realms to join in the liveliness and broaden my horizons. At the high heavens gate, there was a figure that flashed past. Clouds and mists pervaded the air. An ancient beast that was entirely snow-white arrived while treading on immortal light, powerful and intimidating. Haunted ghosts surrounded it. This was actually a white tiger that used gods and ghosts as slaves to protect it at its side. The most crucial thing was that the white tiger was only a mount. The one who spoke just now was a youngster on its back. His expression was calm, his appearance ordinary, but if one looked carefully, there were endless great Tao symbols in the depths of his eyes. This made even Chu Feng shiver inwardly, becoming shocked. This person's mount was a true immortal level white tiger. This was a bit strange, because this person himself hadn't reached that level yet. According to Chu Feng's estimations, his cultivation realm was about the same as his own. However, an evolver at this level actually used a true immortal as a mount. This was already enough to prove that something was wrong. It was clear that a formidable heaven-warping existence came, his sex backing probably incomparably shocking. One had to understand that many great figures who came to the lower realms didn't have any extravagance or mounts. The path of the pure flesh, that evolved civilization that cultivated the body to the highest level, the Tao child of the current age has come? Everyone was shocked and incomparably shaken. Then, many people cried out in joy. Tao child Jinting, please take action and subdue this demon to uphold the name of the high heavens orthodox lineage and spread our might throughout the heavens. Tao child, please take action and suppress this fiend. He is truly too arrogant. The group of people shouted one after another, pointing in Chu Feng's direction. It was clear that this was a young monster with great origins in the high heavens. He was actually the Tao child of an evolved civilization, and no matter where he went, he would stir up the world. He was extremely young. It wasn't that his face retained its youthfulness, but rather that his bones, flesh, and other parts were all exuding true vitality. He wasn't able to reach this step by relying on the accumulation of hundreds or even thousands of years of hard work. Chu Feng nodded. As expected, this person possessed an extraordinary foundation and wasn't simple at all. Come, let's fight. Chu Feng spoke. Alright, my hands are getting a bit itchy. Let me see your methods. Zhen Ting, who was sitting on the perfected immortal white tiger, spoke. His appearance was ordinary, but as the Tao child of an evolved civilization, his strength was naturally unfathomable. The next moment, he directly rose into the air, leaving the perfected immortal white tiger mount, and rushed toward Chu Feng. He used his physical body to crush the void, and countless explosions rang out behind him. Even the void was cut apart by the surface of his body. He was worthy of being someone who walked the path of the physical body. Just this kind of appearance alone was shocking enough. Tao child, don't kill him with a single punch. Keep him as a prisoner, or else there will be no suspense. Let him slowly experience the gap through failure. Someone shouted from behind. Tao child Zhenting hasn't been in the world for many years, but he's already rapidly risen to the 45th position in the ranking of the young generation in high heavens. He's a truly peerless entity and is destined to have few rivals in the future. Perhaps he can walk to the end of their evolutionary civilization. Does this demon Chu still dare to be arrogant and domineering? In the end, he's met a Tao child of our high heavens. He's about to understand that true dragons can't be bred in this filthy land. They're all just earth dragons. He'll soon reveal his true form and be defeated. There were some people in the young generation of high heavens who were very excited. They urgently hoped that Chu Feng would be suppressed in an instant. The main reason was that they had just been defeated thoroughly and even shamefully. They needed a great victory to clear the name of high heavens. In truth, there were many people in the young generation of the Yang realm in front of the Two Realms battlefield. There were even young evolvers from the heavens who were now united against the outsiders. All of you, shut up. Demon Chu's battle accomplishments were obtained through killing. Just wait and see. Even the evolvers from the outer realms who had some enmity towards Chu Feng and were in a competitive position were now expressing their support. They hoped that Chu Feng could defeat the Tao child of high heavens. Even though they knew that this might be incomparably difficult, it could even be said that it was most likely impossible. After all, high heavens was high and aloof. Since ancient times, it had been an unreachable legend. The psychological pressure it brought to people was really too great. All the races of the heavens were incomparably apprehensive. From a psychological point of view, they were somewhat lacking in self-confidence, and felt that they were in a weak position. What are you afraid of? It's just that you don't know. Back then, that person relied on himself to fight his way up. Whoever dares to disobey, will just directly suppress them. Someone shouted loudly. In fact, while everyone was shouting and clamoring, the two people in the field had already collided with each other. Dazzling light beams of great Tao runes erupted and the energy fluctuations shocked many evolvers. People's discussions and even divine telepathic transmissions couldn't compare to the speed of the two people. They were too fast and people couldn't react at all. It was obvious that Chu Feng had let Zhao Lin off the humanoid steed. After sitting there for such a long time, he didn't kill her in the end and let her go. The main reason was also because he felt that if it wasn't necessary, there was no need to kill everyone. Rumble. At this moment, he and Zhenting were locked in a fierce battle. This was indeed a ridiculously powerful opponent. For so many years, Chu Feng had always attached great importance to his physical body. He had cultivated his body of the way to a level of sturdiness and immortality. His flesh and blood were like Vajra. This was the first time he had encountered a formidable opponent in a physical competition, and his opponent was even more extraordinary. This was because in the fierce collision, Zhenting actually dared to use any part of his body to take his fist print. It was really too abnormal. If Chu Feng dared to say that his physical body was second among the younger generation of the heavens, no one would dare to say that they were first. In the end, he had encountered such a monster that even he found difficult to deal with. Before the battle, he didn't become overconfident because he had two fruits of the way of the Heng King. He believed that the truly invincible monsters of the younger generation of the high heavens must have their own trump cards and methods to increase their combat power to the limit. There might even be someone like him who had cultivated an additional fruit of the way. Boom! The heavens fell and the earth cracked. The mountains were snapped like weeds. They were affected by the powerful energy between the two and collapsed. There were also some that were uprooted and blown into the distance by the strong wind. He really is like an unbreakable rock. Chu Feng whispered. This Tao child's physical body was too sturdy. In fact, it could not be described as just an unbreakable rock. This was simply an amalgamation of all kinds of molten gold. Clang, clang, clang. Chu Feng fought with him and collided with his physical body. Every time they collided, all kinds of symbols of the great Tao would appear in his flesh. He was simply immortal and indestructible. Even so, he couldn't break through this person's physical defense, but it still stunned the younger generation of the high heavens. What did they see? After the demon Chu Feng went all out, he was actually able to fight so fiercely with a Tao child ranked in the top 50 of the high heavens? As far as they were concerned, Chu Feng should have been swiftly suppressed. I refuse to believe that I can't shatter you, Chu Feng roared. For a moment, the five-colored wheel of light behind him flourished. It was densely packed with symbols and rare materials of heaven and earth fused together to refine the source of the great Tao for his own use. It illuminated the heavens and the earth. It was also because of the protection of the wheel of light that his defensive power was equally astonishing and invincible. At this time, white mist rose from Chu Feng's mouth and nose. He had pushed the robbery induction breathing technique to the extreme and was using a special ultimate fist. The ultimate fist itself was terrifying and powerful enough. Now, Chu Feng had engraved the golden characters on the stone jar onto his fists and attacked this person. Boom! Boom! Amid the deafening sound of the collision, sparks flew everywhere outside of Zhen Ting's body. Moreover, his skin was cut open and blood flowed out. What? The Tao child is bleeding? How is this possible? His physical body is his most powerful support. Even if his divine soul is injured, his precious body shouldn't be injured. The younger generation of the high heavens were all stunned. I hope you won't disappoint me, Chu Feng roared. At this time, he was circulating the robbery induction breathing technique to the extreme and his body became more and more resplendent. His fists seemed to be able to break through the heavens and became even more resplendent. The densely packed golden runes spread from his fists to his arms and then even his upper body. The weak and the strong will be determined by my emperor's physical combat technique. Zhen Ting shouted. His body glowed and his earlier wounds immediately healed. His aura once again rose by a large margin. Chu Feng ignored him. The upper half of his body was completely covered by the golden runes. This was the first time he had combined all kinds of secret techniques to this level. Boom! His long hair was disheveled and his blood energy surged into the sky. His fist imprints pierced through the sky and the ultimate fist was unleashed. It was as if he had summoned the true ultimate light and caused Zhen Ting to stagger backward. A trace of seven-colored true blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Come, don't disappoint me. Accompany me for a few more moves and let me experience how to cultivate the indestructible body. Chu Feng shouted. The younger generation, regardless of whether they were from the high heavens or the evolvers of the heavens, were all incomparably shocked. This demon King Chu Feng had simply gone crazy. He had actually injured the Tao child of a resplendent evolved civilization in the high heavens. Moreover, he was coveting the other party's supreme body refinement technique. This madman! Even some of the older generation of the high heavens were stunned. They cried out involuntarily, "How can a native be so powerful?" Grandpa Tuyi, if you're not convinced, then come out and I'll suppress you as well. At this time, Chu Feng was arrogant and unruly. Even the old fellows of the high heavens were against him. This was because he had his eyes on the wondrous arts of various evolved civilizations. He wanted to study and steal their knowledge. Boom! He once again forced Taoist Zhen Ting back, causing threads of seven-colored true blood to flow out from the corners of his mouth. The heavens and the earth yearned for a worthy opponent. Chu Feng shouted. When these words were spoken, everyone's expressions changed. This was not only a challenge to the heavens, everyone could feel that he was actually also looking at the various brilliant evolutionary paths. Was this a true madman or just a madman? Chapter 1598. Regardless of whether he was a true madman or a madman, Chu Feng's attitude caused a huge uproar and astonished all the evolvers. Did he really have the powerful conviction to view all the brilliant evolutionary paths? Or was he a bit too conceited? Now, the whole world was paying attention to the two-realm battlefield, and there were even more gazes on Chu Feng. In any case, Chu Feng had defeated a group of heavenly heroes and was now fighting a Tao child of a certain evolutionary civilization. This truly shocked all the races. Boom! Great Tao runes blossomed, and wondrous techniques shook the heavens. Zhenting was like a true dragon or an immortal bird as he rampaged through the battlefield and fought a decisive battle with Chu Feng. This wasn't a Tao child of an orthodoxy or an aristocratic family. He was an invincible Tao child of an entire evolutionary civilization. If one thought about it carefully, it was extremely terrifying. Who knew how many great races and ancient aristocratic families had walked the path of the physical body? No one could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. In this era and on this path of evolutionary civilization, he represented the world's greatest potential. Even in the heavens, a Tao child of an evolutionary civilization possessed an incomparably transcendent status. There was no need to bow or greet the monsters of the older generation. That was because even the most conservative of them would become such people. Their fundamental goal was to establish a foundation and become an ancestor, expanding their own evolutionary civilization. As such, Zhenting's status was far higher than what the evolvers of the heavens had imagined. Only the people of the heavens knew what his appearance signified. He had come to suppress the younger generations of the heavens, and he alone was enough. As such, the people of the heavens were all shocked. They couldn't believe that Zhenting had actually been injured in a fair battle and was bleeding from the corner of his mouth. This was inconceivable. A Tao child of a brilliant evolutionary civilization with an unparalleled physical body has actually coughed up blood. In the heavens, some old monsters were tongue-tied and couldn't believe it. Even in the heavens, there weren't many evolutionary paths that could be completed to the end, and the path of the physical body was undoubtedly one of them. This evolutionary civilization naturally possessed an extremely transcendent status. Kill! Chu Feng's fists became more and more dazzling. The golden runes spread through his arms and covered the upper half of his body, making his fists sturdy and indestructible. It was as if he was the invincible Taoist who had walked the path of the fleshly body. Amidst the clanging sounds, Chu Feng stretched out his arm and struck out with his fist. Sparks flew in all directions from his clash with Zhenting's. Tao markings surged, and it was as if two creatures made of immortal gold were colliding. Should he go alone? They would have long been blasted apart by their fists, and their bodies would have definitely exploded. However, there were countless symbols between the two of them, densely packed together. It was like the flower of the immortal Tao was blooming. The profound meaning was boundless and deafening. Pooh! Zhenting vomited a mouthful of blood. This time, his injuries were even more serious than before. He felt as if his 5 internal organs had been displaced, and tiny cracks had appeared on them. Even an emperor's art of physical combat was ineffective? This made his heart tremble. He never thought that he would meet a monster that was even more monstrous than him in the lower realm. Again, just like this. Chu Feng's long hair was loose, and his eyes were like lightning. It grew brighter and brighter. He was comprehending the other party's path. Because he had grasped the robbery induction breathing technique during the collision, during the life and death battle, he could capture the profound meaning of a large number of symbols. He was stealing it. Zhenting's body was emitting 7-colored radiance, and his true blood was like thunder? It was surging with rumbling sounds? His body instantly healed, and it could be said that he had recovered to his strongest state in an instant. This was the terrifying part of their path of evolution. The physical body was difficult to destroy, and even if the divine soul was damaged or even severed, it could be reborn through flesh and blood. Rumble. Chu Feng was in a state of excitement. He disregarded everything else and used the five-colored halo to protect his body. He used the golden symbols to strengthen the power of his fists as he fought crazily. In other words, he had stolen the secret art of physical combat. He was a bit crazy, and he was actually using it in battle. However, at this stage, he had also made some mistake. With a bang, he seized the opportunity. His right leg swept across the air like an immortal sword, aiming to strike the leaping Zhen Ting's vitals. In the end, although his foot had struck the other party's body, Zhen Ting's legs erupted with sparks and order interweaved. Surprisingly, he was unscathed. On the contrary, Chu Feng's right leg was in intense pain and almost fractured. Hiss! He drew in a breath of cold air and somewhat sobered up. This was a battle of life and death. He had stolen the secret art too much and almost made a mistake. One had to know that the halo behind him and the golden symbols spreading out from his fists only covered his upper body and didn't reach his feet. Hence, to other evolvers, his foot was like an immortal sword that could kill all their natural enemies. But against Zhen Ting, it was a bit lacking. He couldn't injure the other party's vitals and almost injured himself instead. Chu Feng wasn't afraid. On the contrary, he was pleasantly surprised. The temptation of the other party's physical path was growing greater and greater. He was actually quite envious of the other party's strength. Rumble. The next moment, his fist imprint became even more dazzling. It was as if flames were burning the sky and also as if a golden sun had exploded. Endless beams of light swept out from his fists and engulfed the heavens and earth. How can an entity of this level have such combat strength? Some of the old monsters were stunned. Some of their faces were twitching in disbelief. It was obvious that Zhen Ting had encountered the greatest crisis. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, he was covered by Chu Feng's supreme fist radiance. His body emitted sonorous sounds and was about to explode. Taoist is actually at a disadvantage and bleeding from all 7 apertures. This is impossible. The group of young creatures from the high heavens were all stupefied. Then, they began to tremble with fear. A native from the lower realms was actually suppressing Tsang Taoist? The path of the physical body is ultimately emptiness. It's not that the physical body is powerful, but rather that all living things can contain the true self. I am emptiness, emptiness all around me, emptiness in all eternity, unbreakable by 10,000 tribulations, and the flesh is eternal. Zhen Ting's long hair was disheveled and blood flowed from his mouth and nose. He had sustained serious injuries, but he seemed to have gained enlightenment and truly understood the true essence of the secret techniques of the evolutionary civilization he was from. When Chu Feng's fist imprint that was like a rainbow smashed over, the brilliant fist actually passed through his body as if it had pierced through an illusion. What kind of situation was this? Chu Feng was astonished. He clearly sensed that the other party was right there, so how could it pass through him? It was as if he had struck empty air? The air there exploded and the void ruptured. His ultimate fist was ferocious and tyrannical, enough to destroy everything. But now, after he rushed over, Taoist Zhen Ting was still standing there. His entire body was unharmed, and the 10,000 techniques were like nothing to him. The path of the physical body is ultimately emptiness. All living things can contain the true self, emptiness all around me, emptiness in all eternity? The young heaven-warping creatures of high heavens were all shaken. Some of them were whispering. They knew some of the legends about the path of the physical body. Did Zhen Ting gain enlightenment during the battle and comprehend some of the true essence of this evolutionary civilization? Taoist, is he already impervious to all techniques? He has truly cultivated the most powerful path of the physical body and comprehended its true essence. From now on, he is invincible. Someone said excitedly. The path of the physical body was well known in high heavens. Those who truly cultivated it were all extremely terrifying existences. They were the most difficult to deal with. They traversed 10,000 worlds with their physical bodies and used their physiques to suppress all great tribulations. There were unrivaled legends about them. Now, Zhen Ting had comprehended the true essence of the key technique. His strength had undoubtedly increased greatly, and he was now innately undefeated. Sure enough, after reaching this level, Zhen Ting began to counterattack. It seemed as if his entire body was empty, but once he began to attack, regardless of whether it was a secret technique or a fist, they would all condense and strike at Chu Feng's Dao body. Hong! The void exploded. Countless symbols burned like a volcano erupting. Rivers of stars hung upside down, and the battlefield immediately became extremely dazzling. Chu Feng took a few steps back. He was shaken by the tremendous impact, and he felt a great deal of pressure. However, he was fearless. The light wheel that covered his body suddenly left his body. It was dazzling to the extreme and contained his Dao and technique. It slashed through the heavens. He didn't believe that he couldn't injure Zhen Ting. It's useless. My body is empty, and all attacks will turn to nothing. The heavens contain my body, and the void contains my will. You can't injure me. Zhen Ting spoke. This wasn't all. In front of Chu Feng, an enormous figure appeared. It was precisely Zhen Ting. The world condensed a Dharma body for him, and the entire heavens seemed to have become his incarnation. In addition, an enormous Zhen Ting gradually appeared behind Chu Feng. Immortal mist pervaded the air. Then, Zhen Ting appeared on Chu Feng's left and right. They were as tall as the heavens and towered between heaven and earth. They all slowly reached out and then suddenly slapped towards Chu Feng. All living things can contain the true self. The young heroes of high heavens were shaken. Their emotions rose and fell intensely. They were greatly moved. They knew that this was precisely the path of the fleshly body. When this path of evolution was cultivated to the extreme, it wasn't purely about one's body being sturdy and undying. Instead, it was entrusted to the void, and the heavens would contain the true self. That was why heaven and earth could be used to refine one's Dharma body. Right now, Zhen Ting was using this method. All living things in the heavens could contain the true self, willfully manifesting to suppress Chu Feng. Hong Long. A great explosion sounded. Chu Feng went all out. The golden symbols on his fist extended to his upper body, and then covered his feet. His entire body was covered within. Despite this being the case, he was still sent flying. Under the other party's saturated attacks, he was in an extremely passive state. Chu Feng staggered quite far back, but he didn't panic. He wiped away the trace of blood at the corner of his lips and said, "I just don't believe that you can merge with heaven and earth without paying any price. Your body is empty and all techniques are empty. I will still beat you out." This was the first time he had shed blood here and suffered a minor injury. Flames flickered as Chu Feng used flames to burn away his own true blood, leaving no traces behind. "You can try and see if I have to pay the price." Zhen Ting's figure appeared again. It was incomparably majestic, like the manifestation of a giant Buddha. With a boom, a huge palm came from all directions, and its power was immeasurable. Zhen Ting's path of the fleshly body has been sublimated. His ranking is definitely within the top 20 to 30. Moreover, with the passage of time, he will be able to consolidate and further comprehend it. His ranking should rise again. After all, the path of the fleshly body is one of the strongest paths in high heavens. After the Taoist came to the lower worlds, he actually encountered such an opportunity. His strength has increased explosively. Some people in high heavens were discussing. The evolvers of all races in the heavens were all disappointed. Was this the Taoist of high heavens? He was actually so powerful and invincible. One had to know that Chu Feng was already the strongest young expert of this era. In all the realms, there was no one in the younger generation who could keep him in check. However, he was now facing a huge crisis, and Zhen Ting was clearly not the strongest Taoist of high heavens. In an instant, countless evolvers from all orthodoxies in the heavens were somewhat silent. Was this the gap between them? High heavens was high and mighty. Was it truly unrivaled? The path of the fleshly body is very powerful, and it is one of the most glorious paths of evolution in high heavens. It is normal for the Taoist of this evolutionary civilization to be unbelievably powerful. Moreover, after this Zhen Ting has sublimated to the extreme, it will not be long before he can clash with the strongest young leaders of each path. Perhaps he can rank in the top 10 or even higher. An immortal king in high heavens spoke and personally commented. I am undefeated. Chu Feng roared in the battlefield. Although he was in a passive position and could not hit his opponent, and every time he condensed a fist seal, it would pass through his opponent's body, he still did not give up and continued to attack. The path of the fleshly body is ultimately empty? Let's see how long you can remain empty and how far you can go. Even heaven and earth can be broken, even the primal chaos can be opened, and even the myriad Daos can be obliterated. Even if you reside in the void of all things, I can still beat you out and suppress you. The runes in Chu Feng's super fiery eyes were like fire. They turned into beams of light and focused on the void of heaven and earth. He was looking for his opponent's weakness. But in the end, he couldn't help but frown. He saw that his opponent's host body could exist in any place and move with the laws. It was everywhere and could become empty. No weakness? No, all things have karmic threads. How can you break free at your realm? It's impossible for you to become completely empty. It's just a matter of the price you have to pay. Chu Feng's eyes shone brightly. He was trying to use his most powerful stance to shatter heaven and earth, shatter the void, and beat his opponent out. Heaven and earth as the furnace, the mortal world as the fire. Gather all laws into one, the ultimate one. Let the seas flow and the worlds change. I only have this one attack. Chu Feng murmured. His body became brighter and brighter as his strength rose continuously. His opponent was everywhere and was completely empty. On the other hand, he was the opposite. He only manifested himself, and even his various laws had become one. He was only doing this for the sake of unleashing that mysterious attack. At this time, the five-colored wheel of light behind Chu Feng compressed and merged into his body, blending with his flesh and blood. Meanwhile, the golden runes on his fist rapidly expanded and enveloped his entire body. In the end, they fused together with the wheel of light within his body. At the same time, his robbery induction breathing technique circulated and mobilized all the power and mysterious great Tao runes into one. His path and his laws were all being compressed to the ultimate one. He was only doing this for the sake of unleashing that special attack. At this moment, everyone had the illusion that Chu Feng had shrunk into a particle of light and was about to disappear from the world. However, he had crushed the void as if there was a boundless might condensing. Boom! Zhen Ting naturally couldn't watch as he used his unfathomable secret technique and directly attacked. However, after clarifying what he had to do, Chu Feng's actions were completed with a single thought. He crushed the space and his true body erupted from the state of light particles. A terrifying beam of light that could destroy everything was shot out. It was as if it had pierced through the world and was unstoppable, even the river of time. Thump! Taoist Zhen Ting fell out. His body was empty and all laws were void, but now they had lost their effectiveness. Everything in the world had cracked, and even the surrounding order and rules had been torn apart by Chu Feng. How could Zhen Ting evade at his realm? He could no longer use all laws to vanish. He was struck out and coughed up blood continuously. Chi! The five-colored wheel of light flew out and slashed toward Zhenting. This was Chu Feng's ultimate one attack. His so-called all laws returned to one and ultimate one was, in fact, using the wheel of light evolved from the wonderful seven treasures technique as the frame and the golden runes on the stone jar as the core. Then, he used the robbery induction breathing technique to provide energy. Therefore, he had actually used three of his most powerful techniques to support this mysterious attack. The other techniques and methods were all auxiliary and insignificant supplements. Now that the wheel of light had left his body, it represented Chu Feng's strongest attack. The five-colored brilliance illuminated the void and made the heavens rumble and tremble. It was as if all the Daos had submitted. This was Chu Feng's ultimate attack, and it slashed toward Zhenting. Daoists! No. The people of high heavens were horrified. They had never thought that the strongest Taoist, who had just comprehended the supreme true essence of the physical path, would actually be broken by someone. Now, Zhenting was definitely in the most dangerous situation. He might be killed by that monster's wheel of light from the lower realm. In the Yang realm, all the old monsters of the quasi-sage race had complicated expressions. How could they not recognize that this was an attack with the wonderful seven treasures technique as the frame? However, in their hands, this wonderful technique could not be mentioned in the same breath as it was in Chu Feng's hands. He had actually sublimated it and combined it with other techniques, completely surpassing the original scripture. He actually reversed the situation and is going to win? In front of the two-realm battlefield, many old monsters of all races were astonished. Clang! At the crucial moment when he couldn't avoid it and his true body was about to be killed, an object rushed out of Taoist Zhenting's body. It was a simple and unadorned small seal. It was square in shape and collided with Chu Feng's wheel of light, blocking this sure-kill attack. As a Taoist of a splendid evolutionary civilization, how could he not have a protective item? This was the heaven-leveling seal, an evolutionary civilization that walked the path of the physical body. Without even thinking about it, the protective item they gave to the Taoist was definitely sturdy and immortal. Its defensive power was astonishing, and at the very least, it was stronger than their own physical bodies. The protective item used by the Taoist of every generation, the heaven-leveling seal. Someone cried out involuntarily among the younger generation of high heavens. There was no doubt that this was an unimaginable treasure just from its name. In fact, this treasure's origin was far more astonishing than what people understood. It was created by the ancient ancestors of this evolutionary civilization by collecting the void imprints of countless worlds and refining it in every possible way. Emptiness around one's body, emptiness of all living things, emptiness of all laws. The pioneers of this evolutionary civilization had these laws and comprehensions, so naturally the precious materials they collected were also related to this. This heaven-leveling seal looked simple and unremarkable, but it was the only protective item inherited by the Taoist of every generation. One could well imagine how precious it was. Not only was it made of rare materials, but it also contained some essential runes on the path of the physical body carved by the predecessors. It was precisely because of this that it was so powerful and had astonishing defensive power. Therefore, it blocked Chu Feng's wheel of light and allowed Zhenting to avoid the calamity of death. Otherwise, the wheel of light would have struck the space between his eyebrows just now. However, this wheel of light wasn't an object, but the embodiment of Chu Feng's most powerful cultivation. When it operated, it was much faster than the external object, the heaven-leveling seal. With a single thought from Chu Feng, it could change its trajectory and reach any place on the battlefield nearby. Chi chi chi. There were wheels of light and multicolored divine light everywhere. With the wonderful seven treasures technique as the framework, the most powerful attack didn't leave Taoist Zhenting's vicinity. It constantly spun and slashed, and the glaring light beam tore apart the heavens. Taoist Zhen Ting's protective artifact was an external object after all. It couldn't be controlled faster than the Wheel of Light, and with a puff, one of his arms was chopped off in the end. It could be said that the situation was extremely critical and he could be killed at any time. But he was worthy of being a Tao child of an evolutionary civilization. Even if he was in an extremely dangerous situation, he could still clearly see through Chu Feng's actual situation. That Wheel of Light contained the other party's most powerful energy and was the embodiment of the sublimation of his cultivation. Now that it had left his body and was attacking like this, it meant that the opponent's body was very empty. Taoist Zhen Ting was very decisive. He activated the protective object, the heaven-leveling seal, to suppress Chu Feng. The small seal immediately enlarged to the size of a millstone and fell toward Chu Feng. If it were to hit, he would certainly become a bloody pulp and his soul light would explode. After all, this was the object of inheritance of a Tao child of a resplendent evolutionary civilization. Zhen Ting gambled that if Chu Feng were to face it head-on, he would definitely face the calamity one step ahead of him. His physical body was tyrannical and could block several attacks from that Wheel of Light. Meanwhile, Chu Feng's body was currently empty and would most likely be killed by the heaven-leveling seal. If it were anyone else attacking, Chu Feng wouldn't care. Even if he had taken out the Wheel of Light, his body was still powerful enough to deal with it. But this was the protective object of a Tao child of the high heavens, so he naturally didn't dare to be careless. He guided the Wheel of Light to block the heaven-leveling seal even though it was launched later. Rumble! He covered the heaven-leveling seal with the Wheel of Light and swallowed it into the wheel. He immediately wrapped it up and wanted to snatch it away. Destroy! Zhen Ting shouted. However, there were incomparably mysterious golden runes inside the Wheel of Light. They were characters that had appeared on the stone jar and had been comprehended by Chu Feng. He had engraved them inside the wheel and ensured that the five-colored Wheel of Light wouldn't be extinguished and was indestructible. Even the heaven-leveling seal couldn't smash through it. Moreover, following Chu Feng's activation of the wonderful technique, the Wheel of Light rotated and something strange happened. At this time, the five-colored Wheel of Light actually absorbed wisps of rare materials from the world. The simple and unadorned square seal was condensed from the void imprints of various worlds, including the high heavens, by the predecessors of a brilliant evolutionary civilization. Naturally, it was one of the rarest rare materials, and this material itself represented emptiness. The cultivation of the wonderful seven treasures technique originally required one to collect rare materials and absorb their essence in order to comprehend the supreme mysteries behind those materials. The original essence of this wonderful technique corresponded to metal, wood, water, fire, earth, as well as yin and yang. These were the foundation of all things, the essence of the world, and were enough to give birth to a myriad of Taos. However, it had mutated and sublimated in Chu Feng's hands. He had already comprehended his own path. So much so that he even wanted to use some unrivaled evolutionary civilization to transform rare materials and join in. Now Chu Feng had unexpectedly locked onto the heaven-leveling seal and actually seized the ethereal rare material emptiness from it. The wonderful technique operated on its own to continuously extract it. Unexpectedly, the surface of the simple and unadorned heaven-leveling seal was quickly filled with potholes. For a moment, the Wheel of Light was gorgeous and increasingly dazzling. At this time, a misty luster gradually appeared. That was the addition of the matter of emptiness. Chu Feng's mind was struck by inspiration and he rapidly deduced. In a split second, it was as if he had experienced the primordial era. He comprehended the wonderful technique and sublimated it one step further. With emptiness added in, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call this technique the wonderful eight treasures technique in the future. And at this moment, he thought of the time in time. If he could capture the essence of this ethereal rare material and add time into it, the wonderful technique could correspond to the extreme number 9. Rumble. In the end, the 5-colored wheel of light actually turned into a 6-colored wheel of light. Although emptiness was colorless, the embodiment of Tao, the resonance of the world's essence, and the circulation of laws still gave the wheel of light an additional color. At this moment, Chu Feng could clearly feel his own strength increasing. As the 6-colored wheel of light returned and covered his body, it was as if he had been baptized. His body was clear and bright, and his combat strength increased by a level. After absorbing the rare material of the heaven-leveling seal, he gained enlightenment and developed an even more powerful wonderful technique. It was as if Chu Feng had been enlightened. His cultivation increased and his Dharma body became even more terrifying. His whole body flickered with the runes of the great Tao, and the 6-colored brilliance illuminated the void. Bang! In the end, he brandished his fists, and everything around him trembled. He sent Taoist Zhenting, who had already been seriously injured, flying out. He coughed up large mouthfuls of blood, and his opponent could no longer compete with him. Just as he raised his fists and was hesitating whether or not he should suppress and kill his opponent, he suddenly stopped. Not only did he absorb the most priceless rare material, emptiness, from the heaven-leveling seal, but he also observed many runes of the great Tao. In a split second, he understood that these were engraved in the heaven-leveling seal by the virtuous predecessors who walked the path of flesh. Originally, they couldn't be seen by outsiders. However, his wheel of light absorbed the matter of emptiness, and for a brief moment, it resonated with the heaven-leveling seal. Under this special state, he was able to see the essentials of the great Tao. Moments later, Chu Feng put away the wheel of light and threw the heaven-leveling seal back to the heavily injured Zhenting. Here you go. Not only did he not kill his opponent, but he also returned his Tao Protector treasure. Zhenting's expression was complicated. He had actually been defeated, but when he saw the Tao Protector treasure, his eyes widened. What was that? That simple and unadorned little seal was now full of holes as if it had been chewed on by a dog. What happened? He simply couldn't believe it and couldn't understand it. Just what kind of thing could corrode the heaven-leveling seal? The reason why Chu Feng let his opponent go was because the benefits he obtained were too great. He actually obtained the rare material, emptiness. He successfully cultivated the refined wondrous technique, and after comprehending its true meaning, his strength increased explosively. In addition, he also saw the path of the physical body's evolution. Even though it was incomplete, it was enough as a reference. How great of a benefit was this? That was why he stopped. He couldn't even bear to kill Taoist Zhenting. The 6-colored wheel of light spread through Chu Feng's body, purifying it and increasing his strength. Chu Feng was filled with a sense of harvest. After this battle, he had actually comprehended an even more powerful technique, and his strength had greatly increased. If he were to fight against Zhenting again, he would naturally be able to directly suppress him. This time, he had obtained great benefits and his strength had greatly increased. I've lost. Zhenting was also a person who was able to let go of things. He sighed softly and admitted defeat in front of everyone. He owed Chu Feng a favor because the other party didn't kill him. However, he didn't know that Chu Feng was grateful because he had a favorable impression of him because of his contributions. Zhenting had been defeated. Everyone in the high heavens was dumbfounded and indescribably shaken. The Tao child of a powerful evolved civilization had actually been defeated in the lower realms. This was no less than the creation of the world, and it caused everyone's ears to ring. Even the various races were momentarily speechless from shock. Are there any more Tao children of the high heavens? Are you willing to fight with me? Chu Feng shouted to the younger generation of the high heavens. In the end, he even said 2 words, I seek defeat. If defeating a Tao child would bring great benefits, then he really wanted to fight the entire high heavens. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.